I don't hear myself through my headphones. Yes, man. Like, I feel real good about this right now.
Pay attention, because you are now listening to Permission to Speak Freely.
Is that like a preparation dance that you do in the beginning before we start?
Yeah, man. I get my motivation together, man. Get me pumped up, which it's easy to do. You know, to get me motivated and pumped up. It ain't hard at all, man. It's not hard. Real easy. Real easy.
What kind of shirt is that you got on?
Oh man, it's just like a, I want to say it's one like the Rock shirt, man. But
it is the Rock.
It's the hardest worker in the. It says the hardest worker in the room, which is not. I mean, it's that's pretty much how I roll.
Yeah, it is the Rock. Me, I got on. I'm plugging this like not even a minute into the podcast. I wasn't trying to do that, but I got on a D Guts Don't Give Up the Ship apparel shirt, and then the back is actually pretty cool. But I'm not going to turn around right here. But somehow, somewhere on a podcast, if you watch YouTube, you'll see the back of it. It's a pretty cool back of the shirt. Dory Miller, the cook that like really stood up and fought. One of our heroes that we talked about at some point on a pod is on the back of this shirt. So shout out to D Gus. I got a whole bunch of. He got really good apparel. I got some good stickers, some good apparel, and stuff like that. Normally we talk about our weeks and stuff, man. I'm gonna be honest with you. My week was just normal, just the regular. We might have a truck riot or something like that, the State of the Union speeches, and then just the regular, trials and tribulations of being an SEL, man. Normal stuff.
Yeah, man. Yeah, man. I had a couple things happen this week, man. But first, I want to start, man, by saying D Guts. You know what I'm saying? Like, I like a little apparel too, man. You know what I mean? I like to, throw something on and show off too, man, a little bit, man. So D Guts, holla at your boy,
said
man.
You gotta break that. He said you gotta break that money out your pocket, man.
Yeah, man. I got it, man. I got it.
Man. Matter of fact, hey, go check out. Hey, don't be like Damon, guys. Go check out dgutsapparel.com and get yourself some D Guts apparel.
Yeah, man.
Before we start, because I don't want people to see and not hear for way too long, but we have somebody else kicking it with us today. So if you're watching YouTube, I don't want you to be like, who is this person just oddly looking while these guys are talking for like 20 minutes? So I'll let you introduce yourself. Who do we have the pleasure to be talking to today?
Oh man, I am YN1 Geiman. I am a reserve sailor. I did 6 years active duty as an FC type. And we're going to be talking today about a program I started a couple years ago. So just standing by until we get to that part of the conversation. But it's great. It's like real time listening to your podcast, which is great. So it's like, ooh, being part of the magic.
Yeah. You kind of see behind the hand of the magician and realize there's no magic at all, right?
Yeah.
Hey, so Damon,
man.
Let me intro you, man, because I'm in the house, right, with my wife. We watching the worst roommate ever, right? It's on Netflix, right? Worst roommate ever on Netflix, right? Knee deep into a great episode. I get a phone call from Ella, and you can take it from there.
Yeah, so man, so I'm on a ship. I'm in Hawaii. So for the last 2 weeks, I've been back and forth in Hawaii on ships out there. And so I get this phone call on the ship. Well, somebody said you need to go talk to Master Chief. I'm on the ship, Command Master Chief. I said, okay, what's up? So I get in there and they say, hey, your son got hurt. And then, I'm like, and first off, I know I got my son is, he kind of, a little tough guy or whatever. I know it, gonna take a lot for him to be like whatever, hurt or whatever. So you calling me on the ship, I'm thinking it's pretty, pretty bad or whatever already. That's my mindset. It's got to be pretty bad. So then I get there and I'm trying to call. First off, the phones weren't working on the ship for another 30 minutes probably. They were trying to figure out what was going on with the outside lines on the ship. Imagine that, right? So finally, they got everything up. So I call and my wife was like, did you get the pictures? I said, no, I can't get no pictures. I'm out to sea right now because I like to see. I ain't get no pictures. Said, well, yeah, he got hurt. He was at the house doing some stuff and whatever. And so I find out, he was, playing around on a fence or something and jumped down and got his leg caught on the fence. Now, first I'm thinking, okay, yeah, he got, got some stitches or whatever the case may be, right? So I still didn't see it though, and Ella just told me it was bad, but she said it was, he was all right or whatever like this. So I get back the next day in there, man, and I see the picture she sent me. Dude, that shit is so freaking bad, man, that I was like, oh my freaking goodness. And I got a lot of scrapes and scratches and cuts and stitches all over me, but I don't think I got nothing that bad on me already, man. I'm talking about this thing, like Ella was telling me, like the guy in there looking at his bone to see is his bone good, man.
Yeah.
From the cut. It was that ugly, man. It was ugly. So now it made me rethink everything that we do at the command, because she can't get in touch with me. You know what I mean? She cannot get in touch with me while I'm out there. So now it made all of us think, my whole chain of command thinking, like, how we go now? We got to come up with something to figure out how we're gonna do this when somebody needs to get in touch with us out there. She gotta call you. You a million miles away. You know what I mean? To call you and get what you did your thing, of course. But it's just the fact that that's how it got to happen.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? For her to get in touch with me, man. So it was a lot going on there, man. But that was pretty rough, man. Rough experience, especially when I saw the picture. You could talk to somebody on the phone and they try to downplay it. He okay. But once I saw those pictures, man, I was like, oh my goodness. Then they were saying if you would have caught it in a different location, it could have been, worse than what it was, man. So, but he's all right, man. He's freaking trying to talk me back into him trying to get back in playing sports again. I'm like, no, it just happened like a week ago.
You got wait,
like 16, 17 stitches in your leg and all type of stuff. So yeah, man, that's how my week, started off.
He definitely
was pretty rough like that, man.
He gonna have to wait for a little bit, right?
Yeah, it was rough.
He can't just,
Yeah, he gonna have to wait. Yeah, he gonna have to wait for a while, man. If we start putting pressure, because it's like in his calf.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So he tore a lot of stuff up in the calf, man. So he'll be a little while, man. Tough ain't got nothing to do with that, man.
Yeah.
You know what I mean, you gotta hold out.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, that's how my week started, man. Other than that, it was pretty good week. Other than him,
so my my recollection of this, right? Of this is, we watching the documentary. Not me, but Angeline gets the phone call from Ella, and Ella, she's like, "Hey, do you know Damo? Do you know where Damon is? How to get in touch with him? Stuff like that, right?" So I got a couple people to shout out, right? Yo, dude, church and state, bro. Like, so I stopped everything I was doing. I called everybody that I could call, right? So my first phase is making phone calls. So shout out to the good brothers at like Two Dummies podcast, right? I call them. We supposed to be setting up a podcast to record together. And I'm like, man, I got to call y'all about an emergency before this. Because when I know it's bad, right? I know it was a bad injury, but no matter how bad it was and looked, the way that I thought it was like 100% worse. I thought it was like a band of brothers, bone out the leg, injury, the way Ella, the way it was coming out. Yeah. So I left, I came in here and I started like just doing stuff. So so then I remember that, I don't even know if I can say this. I remember that I have MFAS access and I could pretty much find anybody I want to, if I become a part of your UIC. So I became a part of your UIC and I found like people at your chain of command. So I found a warrant officer. Well, first believe it or not, I called Rob. So, and I guess that's what
Rob could have made.
And I guess that's what connects. I'm gonna call you Ann YN1. Yeah. I guess that's what connects Ann to our podcast, because I think she might have discovered us around that time. But Rob helped. So I called Rob, and Rob was the person that helped, right? So he called another Rob, right? So it was funny just talking to two Robs at the same time. But he hooked me up with another Rob, and the other Rob started making phone calls. But I'm impatient. So that's when I got on MFAS and I found one of your warrant officers, and he told me what ship you were on, right? But he told me you were on a Wayne Meyer, right? So wrong ship. So I found the Wayne Meyer and I called their Master Chief, and that's why I want to start giving some shout outs, because Gary Byram, man, Command Master Chief Gary Byram. And this is the kind of stuff we always talk about, like when we say we love the mess and stuff like that, when it's doing what it's supposed to do, right? So I call CMC on the Meyer, Gary Byram, and I'm like, hey, you know, my boy, he's inspector. He called me back. It was funny when he called me back. Because, you know, at first, so I sent him this long message about how DJ was hurt and like all of this stuff. And then he texted me back and he was like, what's the guy's name? I'm like, oh shit, like I didn't put his name in the thing. He was like, no, but you said you got an inspector on board. And I think like when he heard my voice, he automatically like warmed up. You know, he was like, man, you know, the shit going on, you know, when they got inspectors on this motherfucking ship or whatever he said. So then I was like, oh, all right, cool. So I gave him your information and he's like, I really honestly don't know if he's on here or not. And I thought that was weird. I'm like, damn, like y'all just running amok on, you know, on these destroyers, man. It's a small ship with a small mess. So he did his due diligence. He's the reason why I think the William P. Lawrence is a ship that you were on, right? Yeah. So he's the reason why y'all got the phone call. I think he called all the CMCs and he got that CMC. He hit me back. He was like, I think he's not on the Meyer, but he's on the Lawrence. So again, man, I want to shout out to Gary Byram, man. He really, man, he took that ball and he ran, you know, to the end zone with it. And somehow we got in contact with you. And you were able to, you know, get in contact with Ella and see what's going on. But I'm telling you, man, I thought it was like the way, like, so it was a bad injury, like I said, right? I don't want to downplay the injury.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking I'm about to see his bone out his leg. Yeah. And then when Angeline showed me the picture, I was like, damn, that's a deep cut. But his bone ain't out his leg. So I was happy about that.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, so that was.
And that's how she got it. And that's how she got it too, because she wasn't at home either. She was at work. So she had to call somebody else to come like get him or whatever and take him to the hospital till she got there or whatever. And the only thing she sees on whatever, thinking it was on FaceTime or something, she sees was all the blood coming out, all that craziness happening. Yeah. So
and she was crazy. She was shook. She was kind of shaking, man. And I was listening to Tyra and Angeline talk, and it was weird. Like Angeline was asking her like these like really literal like questions, and I'm like, damn, damn, I was learning a lot because I was like, I would not ask any of those questions at this moment. But Ella was answering. It seemed like she was frustrated. She seemed like she was more in a state of shock than anything because she got like, I think your son was in somebody else's care, and I think that's always the weirdest thing is when your kid is in
she wasn't there
somebody else's care. Really quick, when I was growing up, my mom had a friend, and her friends' daughters stayed at the house next door. They did they spent a night because they had friends, and the house caught on fire. And her friends' daughters were the only two people that died in that fire. The rest of the people in their family, you know, got out the house, and the two daughters died, you know, passed away. So it's always, I'm somebody that's real kind of like sketchy about having anybody in my own care. And then I'm also somebody that's sketchy about anybody I love or anything I love being in a possession of anybody else. Because I know at that point, it's a lot of responsibility that's, you know, given up, you know, but
most definitely.
Hey, YN1, how was your week? Anything noteworthy from your week?
Yeah, actually, I just got back to my civilian job because I was in Naples for the last month dealing with, you know, the Eastern Europe Russia thing. So kind of got back out of jet lag, and then I work overnights at the brewery, so I've been just trying to catch up on a normal sleep schedule for the last couple of days. So, but no, it's been nice to be actually back to normal for me, at least. I mean, I don't know how much experience y'all have had with reserves, but it's always just trying to like getting back into the swing of day-to-day life when you go on extended AT.
And that's crazy, right? Because you leave and you got to make an adjustment, right? And then you come back and you got to readjust. And then the job.
Yeah, and
I'm listening.
The job. No, go ahead.
The job is always good with it, right? Like the job is never. You never had a job where it was like, nah, we don't want you here if you can't, you know, be here, you know, all the time.
Yeah, no, so I work at New Belgium Brewing Company, and I let them know ahead of time because originally I was supposed to go for 2 weeks to Africa for an exercise Compass Express out of East Africa, and it's something that my unit puts on every year. It's one of the big Africa exercises that gets put on, like Obagami, Cutlass, African Lion, and stuff started kind of popping off with Russia. And I just told my boss, I'm like, listen, like we also support Naples at Naval Command Europe in Italy. And I was like, listen, like if stuff starts popping off, I know they're gonna pull me for Naples, and they did. So it was like 2 days before we were supposed to be finalizing going to Africa. They pulled me and a couple of our other guys to support for a month in Italy. So they've been super good with flexibility.
When you go over, are you doing your job?
That's
like
good.
actually the job of a YN?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. For the actual exercises, it's kind of like we don't have a whole lot of people. So when I went to Africa this last summer for exercises, I was doing like supply and admin and PAO stuff and kind of LPO. So I'm corralling all of my enlisted guys over like 7 countries, trying to make sure that they're all doing what they need to do. But when I go to Naples, I was working in like J1, or N1, so doing admin for the GIF-MIC this time, which was really nice. So, and I was also like, standing watch on the watch floor, that kind of stuff too. So it was kind of an interesting, I was not always a yeoman. I was a fire controlman. So having to learn a rate when you only do it 1 weekend a month or for, a month at a time is always kind of interesting. But no, the Naples shop is great. Like I've been there enough times where I know most of the people there. So it's always really helpful, and they always kind of answer my questions. I can just do a deep dive and do what I need to do.
So did you become a yeoman before or after you transitioned to reserve?
After. There's surprisingly not a whole lot of CWIS techs in the reserve. And because of that, the advancement is pretty garbage. And at the time I was like, well, I want to get my degree. So I don't want to have to pick a rate that I'm going to have to go to A school. Especially because I'd already spent almost 2 years with FCA and C school. So I'm like, I don't want to go to any more Navy schools. So the option really was yeoman. Yeah. So I was an FC2 when I joined the reserves. I took the YN2 exam to solidify my rate, and then the next cycle I was up for first. So I just kind of had to do it that way.
And how long did you say you were active?
6 years.
So you were active 6, and you've been now reserve 5, you said?
5 about, yeah.
Okay, so you had about 11. I'm trying to practice my math. You had about 11, right?
Yeah, thereabouts. I just re-enlisted last year, so that'll get me to 15, and I'll finish up.
Okay, and you're shooting for 20. Have you ever thought about coming back, over to the active side?
Whenever I'm actually doing reserve stuff, I'm like, man, I miss active duty. Like, I feel like active duty is actually easier than reserves because it's your everyday. You're in it. You don't have to worry about starting and stopping. You don't have to chase junior sailors down trying to get them to do the stuff they need to do. But with my wife and I's plans of stuff, I mean, I was saying, like, my wife's finishing up their dissertation right now. So the places that we can practice is not really like a good fit to be moving around all the time. So, so that's reserves is easier that way because I can always just go up and do AT or mobilize, and they can stay in one spot. Yeah.
Now, did your wife's profession play a part into you going reserves in the first place?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I had a great time active duty. I really did. I've been able to experience a lot of stuff that I feel that a lot of sailors haven't ever been able to experience in my time as active duty. But I do think there's something to be said for like still being able to do Navy stuff, but also getting to grow in this other profession and have time for full-time school and that kind of stuff. So yeah, they're getting a PhD really kind of solidified that.
Yeah, that PhD will get you out of active duty.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Like, and it's funny because we have a friend of ours who he was active duty as a Air Force enlisted, and then he commissioned because you go in as an LT if you have a PhD. So he actually commissioned in the Navy, and so now he is a Navy lieutenant as a psychologist in Norfolk.
Is that a path for you for officer?
I would like to try and make chief first before I start putting in any other kind of package. I knew I liked you.
I knew I liked you.
I mean, I feel it's kind of like it's the bullshit you know versus the bullshit you don't. And I really feel like I get the Navy enlisted bullshit a lot better than the stuff that like officers have to deal with. So I feel a lot more comfortable
Yeah.
in this kind of lane that we're in. So
Most definitely. But it got to be a pretty good gig though, right? Like you reserve, you get to go out 2 weeks, maybe a month, maybe whatever like that. Then you get to come back and do, your regular stuff that you still got there seeing the world. A lot of times that's what we join for anyway. Go out, see the world, see things and stuff. So I was going to ask the same question on I know you was a 6YO, right? When you first came in, like you signed up for 6 years in the beginning when you first came in.
He gave you that,
Yeah, so-
that old school talk, man. 6YO.
6YO?
I was like,
6YO, my bad.
I don't know what that is.
6YO. So yeah, that's what I was going to ask too. Because I know you guys' rating anyway is pretty good for advancement. When you said FCAC too, right? FCAC or FC?
Yeah, I was FC, just straight up FC.
Yeah.
I was
FC, okay.
CWIS Tech,
okay.
so conventional FC.
Because I know
which I love, and it's actually.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Because one thing I do know about that, the money come in when you re-enlist is pretty good. So I knew it had to be a good reason for you to get out. Because I know the money is real good for FC when they re-enlist.
PhD.
Oh yeah, no, not for conventional FCs, unfortunately. And with CWIS, it's actually funny because I got into.
Oh, you said
brewing,
not for conventional?
As a.
Okay.
No, not for conventional. No, FCA absolutely. Okay. Regular FC like CWIS or 5-inch, they're like. They're not giving a shit.
Oh, okay.
But no, it's actually funny because when I was in San Diego, I was on USS Milius out there before they did a home port shift. I was about to get out and I didn't want to do when I got out. I was like, well, I want to go to school, but what for what? And ended up going on a brewery tour at Stone Brewing Company down in Southern California. And I was like, all these motors, all this cooling system, all this pneumatic stuff that they're working with here in the brewery, I already knew how to work with because I worked with it on CWIS. So I was like, oh, well, I could work in a brewery. That makes a lot more sense. And my wife got into a grad program here in Colorado, which is where I am. And Colorado State University had a fermentation science major that focused on craft brewing. Like we've got 2 breweries on campus. So I was like, perfect. I can just do school full time and then get into the brewing industry. So I feel like I do more CWISy type things during my day-to-day stuff and more of the admin stuff when I'm a young.
So how long before the home port shift did you leave the Milius?
I left Milius in December of 2016.
Okay.
So I think they had like 6 or 7 months. Like they were in the process of getting everything finished. We had just gotten out of the yards for I think it was, I don't know if it was Aegis upgrade. It was some type of combat systems upgrade that they had to do. So I was getting off right when that was finishing up, and then they had to do their sea trials, and then they home port shifted.
Did you know an E.T. Anthony DeLuca?
DeLuca sounds familiar, but I'm not pushing a face to the name.
Come on, DeLuca, man. You supposed to be known, man. People asked about you, Tony. That's my boy, Tony D. Hey, before we continue our conversation, I do want to say that it's Women's History Month this month. And just shout out to all the women out there. That's just doing great things. I know that I couldn't function without women. And I got like probably the best feedback. I always say this. I get the best feedback from the women that I work with. You know what I'm saying? Because most of the dudes don't ever really feel like they need to say anything. If they pissed off, they'll punch a wall or do whatever they need to do. And we'll get over it. But the women, I've received the best, most critical, most honest feedback from them. I think the egos would, the guys kind of get inflated. So they probably think like, yo, I'd rather slap Senior in the face, before I tell Senior how he could do better. You know what I mean? Because I like hearing that. But I mean, I can't lie, man. I sat down with my GSC1 before. I've sat down with some EM1s, EM2s, EM3s, just anybody, YNs now, and they, hey, Senior, this, that, you could do this, you could do that better, you do this. I'm even getting now, the women I work with, now they even telling me when I'm making bad health choices. You know what I'm saying? Like if I'm eating the wrong food, I'm like, yeah, I'm like, yeah, I gained a little weight. I ain't been eating healthy. And they like, yeah, we can see that, Senior. So I love all of y'all. Like, and then it's like, man, we got some really gritty, hard working women in our military, man. And even on the reserves, I'm seeing a lot on the reserve side. I'm seeing a lot on the active duty side, and y'all the people that get them screws turning all the time. So I love and appreciate all of you. So shout out to women's, all our women in the armed forces, all our women and our families that we love, and shout out to Women's History Month.
Yeah, most definitely, man. Big shouts out to Women History Month. So with that being said, man, it seems like it's a setup for me right now to get right to
Perfect
get right
timing.
into our hero, right, of the week, man. Our hero of the week is Leanne Hester, right? She was born January 12th, 1982 in Bowling Green, Kentucky, right? So she was a sergeant. So I'm gonna get right into the citation. The President of the United States of America, authorized by the Act of Congress in July 9, 1918 to amended by the Act of July 25th, 1963. She takes pleasure in presenting the Silver Star to Sergeant Leanne Hester, United States Army, for exceptionally achievement during combat operation in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom on 20 March 2005 in Iraq. Sergeant Hester's heroic actions in Iraq contributed to the overwhelming success of multinational core Iraqi mission while serving as team leader for Raven 42 Bravo in the 617th Military Police Company, 503rd Delta Military Police Battalion, Airborne 18th Military Police Brigade. Sergeant Hester led her soldiers on a counterattack of anti-Iraqi forces who were combusting a convoy with heavy AK-47 assault rifle fire, PRK machine gun fire, and rocket-propelled grenades. Sergeant Hester maneuvered her team through the kill zone into a flanking position where she assaulted a trench line with grenades and M203 rounds. She then cleared 2 trenches with her squad leader, where she engaged and eliminated the 3 anti-Iraqi forces with her M4 rifle. Her actions saved the lives of numerous convoy members. Sergeant Hester's bravery is keeping with the finest tradition of military heroic and reflect distinct credit upon herself, the 503 Delta Military Police Battalion, Airborne, the 18th Military Police Brigade, and United States Army.
Well, she was in a fight.
Yeah, man. Yeah,
Man.
in the freaking fight right there, man. On the ground, boots on ground. And not only like boots on the ground, she was leading from the front, right? And that's the biggest thing, you know. Anytime you're talking about fighting, period, anytime you talk about war, we always think about guys and this and stuff like this. But now, you know, you read this stuff, man, and believe it or not, man, we don't hear enough about this type of stuff right here about the women in combat and what they be doing over there doing these wars and stuff like that. It seems like we just don't hear enough of that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna be honest. Like, I didn't pre-prep like and read her citation. You know, when we decided to talk about her, and I didn't know it was gonna be a combat. You know, I knew it was gonna be some way combat driven, but I didn't know it was gonna be that much. Like, you know, her in a fight, her shooting, her leading the pack. Like, that's beautiful, man. I always say that's crazy. I want to stop saying that's crazy because it's not crazy, of course, right? It's a beautiful contribution to the military, and it's a beautiful way for her to step up for that team, man. And that's like superhero shit, right? That, like you said, we get a lot of movies about men and, you know, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. Every now and then we get like a woman with a dog or some shit in a movie, or like maybe like G.I. Jane, like just overcoming the adversity of being a member in the military. But we don't see this a lot, like the combat stuff or whatever. We don't champion it a lot. YN1, like just hearing a story like that, do you feel inspired hearing something like that?
Absolutely. I feel that women, especially women in the military, I laugh that you mentioned G.I. Jane, because like the whole premise of that was like, could women even be on ships? Well, we should make her a Navy SEAL first. Yeah. And you're like, oh, cool. Like, this movie came out during my lifetime. And you're like, yeah, during that time, like that was like oh, do you think women could actually do this? You know, and now we're like, no shit. Like, we've got women on subs now, kind of a thing. And I remember just the amount of pushback of trying to get women into combat, like all these lame excuses about how women don't belong in combat, even though women have always been in combat. Mm-hmm. Like, We've got women from
Mhm.
the Revolutionary War and the Civil War dressing up as men to fight and serving with valor and just killing it, so to speak. Um, so I think it's like if a woman wants to be the person who's like, yeah, I want to go into combat, and if they can do the job, I mean, I think it's seeing more and more that like, yeah, like there's no reason to prohibit that or to put barriers to that. Like we've got all those female like rangers and green berets going through training, and a lot of them are like, can they actually go active? Can they actually be attached to commands that go to war, even though they've already completed the training? So I think that there's still a lot of work to be done, but like it just like reinvigorates the thought of like, man, these women are kicking ass. They can
Yeah.
absolutely do just what
Yeah.
these other guys do. So
Yeah, and I think it's a foolish, our foolish man trait. Like we want to protect. We don't even want them to go out in the front lines and stuff. And if if a able-minded adult makes a choice to do something, then we gotta respect their choice. I mean, that's my thoughts on that one. There's a couple other topics that we're not going to talk about, and that's the real quick, congrats to the newly selected Command Senior Chiefs and Command Master Chiefs,
mhm.
right? Real quick, congrats. My boy Aaron Paul, what up, bro? I know you listen. Congrats on that one. I know that's something I think me and Damon gonna do a deep dive about in a later episode of
Yeah.
Oh By the Way or something like that.
No, I
You
want to
got
give another
anything on
shot too,
that,
man. To
Damon?
John West, man, fellow DC man. He picked up Command Senior Chief too, man. So big shots out to him, man.
Yeah. CB's 80th birthday was March 5th. So a quick one on that. CB's 80th birthday. I gotta shout the CB's out because I joined the Navy to be a CE. I wanted to be a construction electrician. Somehow I became a shipboard electrician. So here I am fixing lights and motor
Doing big things,
controls.
man. Doing big
Um,
things.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure. I love that community, right? MCPON 16 was announced, right? We'll get into that. We'll talk about that. MCPON 16 being announced not today, but we'll talk about it. And then the new mask guidance, in which I will say that I'm super happy about, man. I haven't pulled my mask out in so long, man. And Planet Fitness, I don't even got to wear the mask in Planet Fitness anymore. But even at the installation, since we're not like really at risk, we're not wearing our mask at work anymore. So I'm super excited about that one. I don't know are they still wearing it on the
No,
ship, Damon?
I'm assuming it's kind of maybe a CO thing, but we went over there, man. 2 ships I was on, they relaxed the mask too, and that's in Hawaii. So I haven't went on a ship yet over here since they relaxed it, but over there, yeah, it's relaxed, man.
Yeah. I think it just depends on your cases and stuff like that. And like I said, we'll get more in depth with that stuff, like probably in our next episode or something like that. But I do want to get into this conversation we have with YN1, and I want to start off just pretty much asking you, like how did you get here? Like, what brings you here at this moment on this podcast right now?
So I actually reached out to you guys about a month ago while I was in Italy. And the reason being was I had a sailor contact me via Facebook, and she had seen that I was involved with the GLASS program, which is Gay, Lesbian, and Supporting
Mm-hmm.
Service Members program. Used to be supporting sailors, but now it's DoD wide, so we have to kind of include all of our other non-sailor brethren. And I was like, oh, that's super cool. And one of the things I always ask is like, what command are you at? And also, how did you hear about the program? And she had mentioned that there was a first class Facebook page that she had seen a couple of people ask about it that I had replied to. And that also that you all had mentioned in your podcast, it coming up in one of the stories that you had with a Master Chief agent, I think it was Flowers. Yeah.
Flowers, HMC,
Um,
yeah, HMC and
he
Flowers.
he had spoke about an an event that had happened on a ship he was on where they had a glass chapter, and how he had basically gone into the mess and was like, hey, does anyone want to help with this fundraiser with this group? And everyone kind of gave him shit about it, about how they didn't really support the lifestyle, what have you. And then they ended up coming to the actual event and having a great time, and how he kind of felt a certain way about that. So that is actually what introduced me to your podcast. And I will be real, I have done a deep dive listening to all your back episodes. I'm like, all right, I gotta be prepped. I gotta be ready to go. But yeah, so I was in Naples, and I usually get, I think last year I had something like 25 chapters reach out to me to get started. So this year, actually since February, I think I've had about 5. Actually, one this morning. I was sending out paperwork before I got on, and yeah, I was just like, your platform that you have, especially towards the audience that you do, I thought it would be kind of a cool experience to talk about how I started the organization, because this last February was actually the 10-year anniversary of the program being founded. So
Nice.
it's been a lot of stuff that's happened in the last decade. When I say it that way, I feel like I got a preteen. But yeah, I wanted to kind of see if you all would be interested in hearing about my story and about the story of what LGBT identified sailors have had to go through, especially in the last 10 years, and how we're trying to continue providing resources to people who still, in a lot of cases, don't have very good access to resources.
So, yeah, I want to
So
say something real
let's
quick before you
go
guys
ahead, Damon.
YN1 get started. Is that the reason why I want to really hear this story, and how how it goes, in these sailors' lives, because I'm a servant for sailors, right? I'm always trying to help sailors, but I don't get, like, you know what I mean, all the information. One thing I'm doing is I'm trying to get, if they need some paperwork they need to do, I'm trying to get this paperwork from this spot to this spot to make sure everything goes smooth for them. But I don't really know any of the backstories, and everybody don't want to really talk about anything. So that's one of the reasons why I couldn't wait to get you on and we can get your story out.
Absolutely.
Yes. So and I agree with Damon. And just I asked you this in the beginning of it, and most likely it won't happen. But I asked you to give us the grace of ignorance, because I might ask a question because I don't know the answer.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? And in America right now, I see it a lot, like on social media. A lot of people don't get grace for their ignorance, for like the things they don't know and understand. They don't get educated about things that somebody might make a dumb ass statement, right? Like on their Twitter or somewhere. Something that they feel is based off the experience they lived in their life that they feel is a true statement. And they get blasted.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I don't see a lot of the educational aspect sometimes with a million different topics, whether it be racial, whether it be have to do with your sexual preference or anything. I just see people get blasted based off of ignorance. And I think America should give more grace in that department. You know what I'm saying? It's been a lot of times where I've saw somebody say something that I thought was racially, I even stopped saying racist. I started saying like racial. If you listen to the pod every episode, you probably heard me say like, yeah, I think that's racially ignorant.
Absolutely.
Like maybe it's some more education that I need to do. Then if I give you this education and then you still got your take, then we might, shift the conversation. But I think everybody needs education and information. The first aspect of education that I need is, I will admit that I didn't know what glass was at all. Even when Master Chief Flowers brought up glass, that was the first time I heard it, and I'm sure that's why he broke the acronym down, because I'm sure he probably knew that a lot of listeners probably didn't hear anything about it. So that's the first thing, like, what is the glass program? If I was interested in it, how could I, get involved, and how is glass doing?
Absolutely. Well, and I want to start off by saying it is not my intention to have like your podcast canceled if you slip up during this podcast with stuff. That is not my intent. I feel that having in any conversation, be it about sexual orientation, gender identity, race, religion, a lot of stuff, I think it comes from it's all the intent of the place that you're coming from. If you're coming from a place of wanting to learn and be respectful, if you slip up, that's totally fine. If you say know that something is offensive and you keep saying it anyway, that's coming from a different place. So I feel like a lot of people are too afraid to ask the questions, and by not asking the questions, they're kind of setting themselves up for failure, with also the caveat that I am in a position as a gay person. Hi, your podcast. I am a gay person. I'm putting myself in the position to talk about it and to instruct and to be a reference. But not every gay person feels that that is their job to educate others. So I think that asking the right questions in the right setting, I feel like, say, like a podcast talking about not just my glass story or my story that I've had since I've been in the military, but also, as I like to say, gay shit. In general, like this is a very good place to ask just honest questions and receive honest answers. So please just let me know. Like, don't feel like I'm gonna get all hulky about everything that you ask. Like, nothing's off the table. But yeah, so Glass was originally founded in February of 2011, and I joined the Navy in the last months of Don't Ask, Don't Tell. So I'm considered the last generation of people who enlisted under the policy, to the point where I literally have the instruction that I had to initial that says I will not commit any homosexual acts. I keep it on my fridge as a reminder of how far we've come. Mm-hmm. So when I joined in 2010, in October, when I swore in, I had been out as a gay woman for about 6 or 7 years. I had been out. I had never really been in a closet. I was just kind of like, oh, this makes sense. Have always had a very supportive family. About, after I came out, I've had a very good experience being out. So I willfully went into the closet to join the Navy. And
now, can we stop there for questioning?
Absolutely.
So how is that how was it for you? Because I'm just just kind of looking at you like right now, just talking to you and looking at you. My question is like, how hard was it for you? Like, did you try to act like
more
textbook
feminine
version of like,
no.
more feminine or something?
No, for all you guys in audio land and not seeing the video, like I've got short hair. I'm literally wearing a flannel, not to be super stereotypical, but here it is. And I've always been, I would say, more masculine of center presenting for a woman. Mm-hmm. So I don't wear makeup. I don't wear feminine cut clothes. I don't wear dresses. And I never have. Yeah. Like my entire life, that has not been my deal. I think I've maybe had long hair twice in my life. So this is how I have always presented. And so, and I think this is why, when I told my sister joined the Navy about 6 months before I did. And my mom was like, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. And then I told my mom, like, hey, I'm also joining the Navy. And my mom was like, are you sure that's a good idea? Because she was so afraid that not only would I be a target physically for someone to hurt me physically, but also that it would be a target professionally, about would people use my sexual orientation as a weapon against me. And she knew kind of how I was, where I'm not that I'm confrontational, because I'm really quite passive when I'm trying to get along with people. But I also tend to kind of stick to my moral guns, especially when it comes to being gay. So my thought was, I was working as a journalist before I joined. I joined when I was 24. And up until then, I had been working as a newspaper photographer. And so, I've been reading stories about how they were trying to repeal Don't Ask, Don't Tell. And I was like, well, even if I have to suffer through it for a bit, odds are it's probably going to get repealed. So I wasn't coming into it there's no end in sight for this. I had the thought that eventually it would get repealed during my tenure in the Navy. So I went ahead, and then in December of 2010, when I was in boot camp, Obama signed the repeal. And of course, they didn't tell us while we were in boot camp. So we got out of boot camp and they're like, all right, all you gays, don't say anything yet, because we still have about 8 months before this is enacted. So you can still technically be kicked out before it's actually enacted. So even though the president had signed it, there was almost a year gap between the signature and when you could actually come out.
Yeah, that was a weird time.
It was
I remember that's a weird time.
And honestly, the story of gay rights in the military is all about hang time and just really weird, legal stuff that we'll get into. So I was in Great Lakes for about a year and a half, because FCA school and ATT is a long school anyway. And then we were on hold for about 6 months because there was no room in our C schools. So a lot of us were trying to kill time basically. Like I joined the Sapper program. I got certified as a Sapper VA. I was in CSAT. I don't know if y'all remember CSAT program.
Yeah.
I was doing that. So that was my kind of day-to-day stuff while I was on hold. So I got to, meet the captain of TSC, and I was working with the Sapper program out in Great Lakes. And so I have a friend of mine, very dear friend of mine, who at the time was identified as a lesbian, but has since come out as a trans man. And he has a wife and 2 kids and was trying to support them on an E3 salary, but because they could not be legally recognized, he was trying to support the wife and 2 kids with an E3 salary. And so his wife was disabled and wasn't able to work. So he was basically constantly just unbelievably stressed out about money and stuff. And I remember one night coming back to the barracks room, and he was an FC as well, and he was in the barracks room with me. And real talk, we had gone to Sam Adams, so we'd all been kind of drinking that evening. So we were all kind of just confrontational anyway. And he had just gotten off the phone with his wife again and was just like crying and stressed out again. And I remember sitting in that room and just saying like, man, there's got to be like some like elder gay who knows all the red tape, like all the forms you need to fill out to get someone, as your dependent who's not quote unquote you're married to or related to you. I'm like, there has to be someone who's figured this out. Like we cannot have done this entire thing without having people figure out a loophole somewhere. And I was like, I just wish we had like a group that we could go to. And then it was like a pause. It was like dead silent. And it was like a lightning bolt. And we all just start kind of looking at each other like, that's a great idea. So that was in the spring of 2010 or in the fall of 2010. Or 2011, because I got out of boot camp in 2011. And I knew a few people from Sapper. There was a BMC, Dina Reese. I don't know if you know her or not.
I've heard that name. I've heard
she was in Don Sapro. She's in a lot of the videos that Sapper puts out. She's Southerner. She's got short hair, kind of looks like me, but like 20 years older. She was working as the Sapper director at Great Lakes, and I worked with her through the Sapper program. And so I'd asked one of the civilian therapists at Fleet and Family, I was like, hey, do you happen to know like a gay sailor I could talk to about starting a program? And they kind of like gave me a knowing wink, and they're like, yeah, we got someone in mind. And so I went up to Dina and I was like, listen, like this is our idea. We want to start an officially chartered gay straight organization on base where you don't have to be gay to come, because like people have friends, family, whatever, who are gay or just supportive. And I didn't notice at the time, but like she had joined the Navy in like the late 80s. Like she retired this last year after like 32 years. And she was in before Don't Ask, Don't Tell, and then during the entirety of Don't Ask, Don't Tell. And so here was this like little E3 FC tooling around like, let's start a gay group, chief. And she's like, oh shit. Like, but she did. She and she told me later that like that was a moment where she had to either kind of put up or shut up. And she's like, I'm a chief and I need to take care of my sailors, and she's one of my sailors. And that actually kind of forced her out of the closet. I didn't realize it at the time, but she got out of the closet to help us and be our mentor. So we had a group, got a FCC Briscoe now, Greenwood. There was a couple of us who were in the same class, basically, who were gay. And again, we all knew each other were gay. We just couldn't say it out loud. But the kind of word got out of like, hey, what do you think about starting a group? So like, we're going to base legal, trying to draft charter and bylaws. But how do you draft a thing that's never existed before? So we're going to like civilian gay straight alliances, looking at their charters and bylaws and trying to morph it with like an FCPOA or a chief's mess or anything like that to kind of make it applicable for the Navy. And so we get to the point where we go up to the captain, Captain Pete Littner, who was the best captain I've ever had. And we walked into his office and we're like, sir, we want to start a chapter. We want to start an organization that's officially allowed to exist on base in a command capacity. And he was over the moon about it. Like he was so excited. And he said like the only thing that he wished that had been different is that it didn't have to come from us, that he would have thought of it, or one of his, higher ups would have thought about it, and it wouldn't have had to come from a group of E3s at its command, kind of a thing. So he signed it, and it's different in the sense of like other, say, military gay groups, like things like OutServe and American Military Partner Association. You have all these other different organizations that serve LGBT military populations, but they're not allowed to exist on base. They're all off base, off duty organizations, whereas Glass can work afloat, ashore. It's seen in the same capacity again as like an FCPOA.
Mm-hmm.
So
now, why is it that I don't know about it?
I would say that, which is funny that you don't, considering I think most carriers have a chapter, most training commands have a chapter. I mean, Bahrain, there's 2 in Gitmo, there's like 5 in Japan. They're kind of smaller though. It's not like if you're on a command, say you're on the Truman, for instance.
Yeah.
If you're not a gay sailor, you wouldn't necessarily be looking for it. Like it's kind of like one of those like, oh, it's a smaller command, like it's a smaller group. Even though like we've marched in the San Diego and the Chicago Pride parades and things like that. Like it's a very good network. And also like depending on how many people are involved, like it could, if people get transferred, they might, it might kind of go dormant for a little bit and then come back, kind of.
Okay, so it's powered by whoever's hands it's in at the moment.
Exactly. It is not I don't think I've ever had like a captain reach out or a CO and be like, we want this for our command. It has almost exclusively been E6 and below wanting to start up from the grassroots or the deck plate level. So it's not a mandated group. So it's kind of like if you want to. Also, like, again, some commands are awesome about it, and some commands just put down every conceivable roadblock to have a group start. And that has been shown time and again, is that it really just depends on how accepting your triad is to see whether or not you actually even get a chance to have a chapter.
I got a question about that.
So,
have you been hearing that lately though? Like it's still been roadblocks. I know it's 2022. I mean, like, but you still been hearing like that's been a thing still, roadblocks.
Yeah. Actually, I won't say the command, but I had a sailor reach out to me last night, and I was sending her stuff today, where they already have a chapter at this command, but the CO and the command have basically been like, you're not allowed to fundraise, you're not allowed to have any events. And I'm like, that's weird, because we have other chapters who are doing like full drag performances and making a shit ton of money, like Master Chief was saying on the Carrier, where they made like a ton of money from their event. So it's things like, yeah, you can have a chapter. We don't want to be that guy who's not allowing the gays to do their thing, but we can also be like, you're not allowed to fundraise and you can't do anything during working hours, kind of thing. So
yeah, so you kind of shot out at the knees. You can't really do much if you can't make money.
Exactly. And honestly, like, even if you can't make money, it's not necessarily about the making money part. Think of like the towns that you all came from, Mississippi and Philly. We've had a lot of kids who the first time they've ever left their hometown was to join the Navy. And they knew that, like, deep down, they knew that they were the one gay kid. And so a lot of people join the Navy to see the world and to experience other stuff. So for them, they have now a built-in group that they can go to for support and advice and community that they wouldn't have normally had. I had a chief, I think he's retired now. We were at a sapper run walk thing, and I was telling him about the program. And he's definitely kind of flamboyant. I was like, all right, man, talk to my chief, I got you. Like, we're kind of doing like the knowing wink nod. And I was telling him about the program, and he was like, yeah, he's like, I came from a very small town on like deep Texas, and he joined the Navy again to see the world, knew he was gay. And I was in Chicago and decided one night to go downtown to the gayborhood, so to speak. There's a neighborhood in Chicago that's notoriously gay. And his first experience with a man was a sexual assault. And he was saying that, he wished, like, he no shit told me, he was like, I wish that I had a group like Glass to go to, because having someone who has your back in all these capacities is like, I wouldn't have had to go and put myself in that position where that happened. So
I'm listening.
oh, okay.
So if somebody wanted, if I'm a young sailor and I want to start a chapter on my ship, right? What would I do?
So most Glass chapters are started kind of by word of mouth. Either someone's like, oh, I had it on my last command and I want to get it started here. So they'll either get the bylaws from someone that they know, or they'll reach out, like say on Facebook. It's like really the only reason why I still have Facebook, is because I still get so much of my need for Glass from there. But they'll send me a message like, hey, YN1, like, I heard you're the person to go to. And I send them charter, bylaws, application, a example of a letter of acceptance, like approval letter. And then I tell them, all right, before you start anything, kind of sniff around and see if there's any interest. Because it's one thing to be like the one gay sailor who wants to start it. And there's another thing to be like, yeah, we've got like, 12 people already really are excited for this program. So you kind of already have like a groundswell of support. And then I was like, next, find yourself a khaki, either one who's gay or one who's supportive, either chief or officer, to be your like liaison. And then I say, before they submit the charter and application, the bylaws up through the command, through the triad, I say, if you're able to, schedule a sit down with them before it crosses their desk, so you can answer any questions that they might have before they see it and are like, what is this? Why are you doing this? Why do you use it? So usually that tends to be the most efficient way to actually get a chapter.
Okay. So y'all went, you talked to the CO. CO said, only thing I regret is that this had to come from you guys. Now, what happens after that? It's off to the races. It's good to go. No issues, no roadblocks.
So not in the way that you would expect. So we had gotten it signed in February, and later that month, and especially because this is right after the repeal, so it's like a big news story. Everyone's like, how's the military dealing with all the gays now? We've been here the entire time. And so we were in Illinois, and there's a major gala that happens every year that LGBT people from the state of Illinois, bigwig Chicago types, do this fundraiser every year. And so they'd gotten word that we had just started this chapter, and we had been in a couple newspapers at that point. Like, I accidentally came out to my grandmother on the Chicago Tribune. Totally forgot to tell her I was gay, and then it was like front page gay sailor. I was like, I should probably let Nana know. But yeah, they reached out and they're like, yeah, the Coors Foundation bought you guys a table for your chapter to come to this event. And we're like, yeah, sure. So legal department jumped through all these hoops to get us in our uniforms to go, even though it's a weird thing with uniforms, especially in an official capacity. And my chief, Dina Reese, she was she was trying to spearhead it, get everything set so we could go to this thing in uniform. And then the day before, she hears that, I guess, the XO called her and was like, listen, you're not going to be able, you can go, but you can't do uniforms. And that apparently had come down from the admiral, because he was just a little too gun shy to have his sailors from Great Lakes being that visible at a gay event. Which I'm like, I kind of got it, also because it was so new. I mean, at this point, I couldn't even have it be LGBT, like, because trans people weren't allowed. So we had to like omit the T, even though we'd always been supporting of trans people. So there was a lot of like minuscule politicking of how things could be worded and what you could do. But yeah, other than that, like, it kind of exploded where everyone was really, really interested in what had happened. And I eventually transferred that year. I think I transferred in April, May, to San Diego for C school. And I'm in C school one day, and Chief calls me. She's like, hey, dude, are you sitting down? I'm like, what the fuck would I be sitting down, dude? I'm like, no, I'm on break. She's like, I need you to sit down. I'm like, is something wrong? What happened? And she's like, well, the White House called Great Lakes, and they want a representative from Glass to be the first official Navy representative to the June Pride Month at the White House. And so I immediately sit down. I was like, say what? And I was like, what are you saying? She's like, they want you to go to DC to represent the Navy as an out gay Navy person at the June Pride Month event.
Wow.
And I'm just kind of like, and again, I've been in the Navy for a year and a half. Like, I did not fully understand that this was not how shit happens in the Navy. Like, these are not the routes that normally happen for anything to happen in the Navy. Like, especially as someone who just was like a push button third, you know, like 2 little ribbons and a chevron and been in for 5 minutes to now then be the face of gay Navy at the White House. So she was like, well, you got a +1. And at that time I was dating my now wife. And I was like, Chief, you got to be my +1. And she's like, no, I think this is for you and Jen. And I'm like, you don't understand. I'm like, I cannot be the only person in uniform at this event by myself. I'm like, and also, like, you know, you put your anchors on the line, you put your reputation on the line to stand up for us, you know. And so she had gone from being in the closet, less than a year before, to being in full dress whites at the White House reception meeting Obama, kind of a thing. So huge, like, I mean, talk about how fast did things take off. Like, they took off at breakneck speed, and I hadn't even gotten to my ship.
Yeah,
You know?
I mean, fresh, and that's just an indication that leadership does not have any rank. You know what I'm saying? Leadership, getting things done, kicking down doors and stuff, that shit don't got no rank. I mean, big shout out to you for starting a program and being recognized for that program on the highest level possible as a junior sailor. You know,
well, and it's interesting. Yeah.
You know,
well, it's like I make the excuse of, like, I think a lot of times, like, junior sailors, especially with like the up tempo being what it is, like, they get really kind of disenfranchised about it. Like, they get really like, I have all these ideas of how we could do this stuff better, and it doesn't matter, and what have you. And it's like, to some extent, yes, but I'm like, I don't like, especially in my experience, like, the amount of things I've been able to do for the amount of people I've been able to do them for, and I did it all before I was like, well, I was an E5 for the most part.
Yeah. So you know, my concept and thought with that is, like, it's always somebody else that's either more senior, that like kind of lost their knees a little bit a while ago, you know, that is looking and waiting for a junior seller that got good legs up under them, good energy to come around and have these ideas, right? So I think, like, and that's not just the idea of glass, but like any idea, because I see the Navy as a bunch of junior sellers suppressing some of their ideas that they have that could change shit. So that suppression translates into frustration, which translates into just a bunch of people on the mess decks complaining about shit that they have the ability to change, right? And
Absolutely.
It's a chief, a senior chief, an officer, captain, whatever, that's waiting for somebody else to be like, hey, I think we could do this. And then it's like, you know, the old dude from the movie that's like dusting off his old baseball uniform. Like, yeah, like, I'm gonna put the uniform back on. I can't wait, you know? Or like Rocky when Creed comes up to him, like, yeah, let's get back. It's always, but it's like, you just need that one. I got a million at this point. I got a million things that I wanted to do that's probably been tucked away, you know? And if I catch that one young sailor that's ready to shoot, I'm ready to pull out those million things. Like, hey, I got this. What about this? We could do this. There's always somebody waiting for somebody, you know? So, you know, just message to the young sellers out there, man. If you have an idea like YN1 had as a E3, just do it. It's really the limitation is, you know, is at defeat. Like, it's like at death. Like, it does not die until it dies. So just do it, push it. You know, you might take rejection every now and then. Those kind of things might happen.
Yeah, I would add to that, man. Like, don't let one person, you know, detour you from what you're trying to get done. Like, one person say, oh, no, it's not a good idea. Then all of a sudden you go somewhere and hide somewhere. Because we all know the old saying, a closed mouth don't get fed, right? So bring your ideas up and talk about them. And you might just be surprised on how many people that be supportive of what you're trying to do. And this is a perfect example of that. I'm very impressed, man. Let's listen to this whole story and what you're talking about, man. I'm very impressed. More impressed on how junior you was to bring this up. You know, I'm more impressed with that, the fact of it. But man, this type of stuff this is what our podcast is about. you know what I mean, stories like this and someone coming on here and bring it up. We always, Dumbo always talk about, you know, trending, being a trend maker and all this type of stuff, you know, being the first and all that type of stuff, man. And you're a perfect example of that.
Yeah. So
Well, and I appreciate that from both of you, truly. Like it's nice to hear for sure.
yeah, I mean, it's good stuff. I want to get back somewhere real quick. I want to get back to you going in the closet momentarily to like act like you wasn't gay for the Navy.
Yeah.
Right. So
Absolutely.
how do you feel doing that? How do you look doing that? Like, what is that?
So it's actually kind of funny because I joined the Navy. I was coming off of about a year and a half of like hardcore womanizing, and I had no desire to date. Like I need to join the Navy to get out of this situation. And I was not looking for any kind of relationship. And then like 2 months after I got out of basic training, I met my wife.
Mm-hmm.
And this was also still like, you know, we could be out, but we couldn't be out yet. And so like my wife would literally drive like an hour and a half each way to go to base to sit at the USO with me, where like we couldn't be sitting near each other or anything like that. We would just have to be like having space between us. And I remember asking, I was like, you know, how do I know how much you love me, basically? And they're like, I'm willing to drive 3 hours to not even be able to hold your hand, kind of a thing. And I think that was like when it really kind of hit me just how completely unfair this whole situation was. Because you have, and this kind of gets in later on too, because once Don't Ask, Don't Tell got repealed, there were still no benefits for spouses. There was still no protection under equal opportunity at all for gay people.
Mm-hmm.
So you would have people who were married, say like you get married in California. Great. You're gay and married in California. And then you get stationed in Virginia, and then your marriage didn't matter. So all the benefits, all the things that you normally would have for your spouse and your dependent didn't matter. So I feel like I was very, very briefly in a closet, and it just pissed me off. Mm-hmm. It wasn't like I wasn't scared. I wasn't like, I didn't feel judged. Like I was never raised to feel that being gay was like a moral failing or like against God or anything like that. Like I was never taught that. So I didn't inherently feel that who I was a wrong thing. Mm-hmm. I always just thought that like it was so screwed up that this is the way that the system was. And I also felt so surprised that by me being like, hey, what about a gay straight alliance? And everyone's mind collectively exploded. I'm like, why is this such a big deal? Like, I didn't understand why it was such a big deal at that time and place. But yeah, I think the hardest thing was like being in a brand new relationship with someone who I've now been with. We celebrate our 11-year anniversary this month.
Yeah.
Nice.
You know, someone who has had to deal with distance and deployment and has had to deal with the exact same stuff that every other male spouse has had to deal with, to have to hide that and be afraid that if someone catches you with this person, it could mean repercussion.
Yeah.
You know, and again, like I've known, like I have a friend of mine, Senior Chief Ellie McKinney. You know, she's been with her wife for like 20 years. They have a now grown son. And like, you know, when she came home from deployment, her family couldn't be on the pier because people would be like, Chief, why is that kid calling you mom?
Yeah. Crazy.
Kind of a thing.
Yeah, it's rough.
You know, and that's just, well, and I think like having that knowledge and that perspective made me not complain about it as much because I had to deal with it for such a short amount of time. And even though I did kind of put myself in the firing line of a bunch of hate and nastiness, especially online, and a lot of questioning of like my why am I doing the things I'm doing? It's not needed. You guys are just trying to get attention. You guys are just trying to change the military to be more liberal, blah, blah. And I'm like, these people have had to spend their entire careers hiding the people they care about the most just so they can also serve the Navy that they also love.
Yeah.
Like, it was very much it was definitely an eye-opening thing that I learned very early on about it could be a lot worse for me personally.
Yeah, I mean, those people, you know, and, you know, here I am over here bitching about having to get a new no-shave chit when I go to a new command. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like I really gotta get tested again. Like I should be able to go through the whole Navy with this beard. You know what I'm saying? So,
Yeah.
but it's just, I mean, just dealing with that. And I mean, we got that story from, we had another guest on our podcast a while ago, First Class, and she had a story, you know, similar, where she was talking about her wife and like who I think at the time was her girlfriend, and it's like you gotta hide it, you know, you gotta hide it, you know, and I just can't help but think about the conversations that like somebody would have to deal with when they are in the closet, the things they gotta hear people say, and they can't just come out like, yo, like I'm gay. You know what I'm saying? Like that's,
Yeah.
I'm not cool with, you know, and then because at that point it's a trigger point because you could get in trouble. You know, you get in trouble for defending yourself. You know, at that point. So, so let's get to, because all of this happened in A school, right? As far as starting the
A
chapter
school,
and
C
stuff like
school,
that.
yeah.
Okay, so you out of C school, and you get to your first command, your first ship, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. It was an interesting change for that, because I had been coming off of, you know, I'm in the New York Times, I'm in the Chicago Tribune, I just got back from the White House, like I'm doing all this, you know, as they say, gay shit. And I get to my command, and I'm there's one other woman in weapons in my division, and my work center soup was a extremely conservative, extremely Southern, like didn't think women should be in the military, let alone gay people, you know, very kind of, you know, what he said went in the division. And like all the other guys kind of looked to him as like the de facto manly man. And so not only did he get a woman in his shop, he got a gay woman and an out gay woman in his shop.
Yeah, he was red.
So
he was red hot. He was hot. See the steam coming.
And he was not. Oh my God. And it was so jacked up because, you know, I was trying my hardest because, like, you know, you get to a ship, you've never been to a ship before. Like, I'm trying to get my quals, I'm trying to learn my system. But it was like this constant bombardment of just like sexist, homophobic shit, just constantly. Even if like he didn't say it outright, it was just kind of like, oh, hey, like I'm starting a glass chapter on Milius. And he'd be like, I don't get the whole point of blah, blah, blah. Just like constant negativity. And it wasn't really until he left that I was able to kind of start like working on the rest of the guys and being like, hey, like, I'm just as good of a sailor. And I remember we were on a gun range one day because we were, you know, getting everyone qualified on like M9 or the 9mm and M4 and what have you. And I was in the line shack with my GMC, and I was just venting because I was close with him. Like we had duty the same day, and I was like, Chief, I just don't get it. Like I got the EP and everyone was pissed, but I'm like, I'm starting class, I'm a SAPRA victim advocate, like I'm getting all my quals, like, you know, everyone was pissed that I got it. And I'm like, I just don't know what else I can do to be taken seriously, basically, right now. And he sighed, and he was very real. He's like, listen, the guys don't care how many times you've been to the White House. They don't care how many gay organizations you've started. They care about if you know your system. And he's like, and honestly, he's like, you have two strikes against you because you're a woman and because you're gay. He's like, and unfortunately, you're going to have to work twice as hard as everybody else to be seen as equal to everybody else. Yeah. And that was a very hard truth, but it was kind of like a slap awake to be like, okay.
Yeah, and that's
what I have to be.
And that's a rough conversation to be the recipient.
That's a tough conversation.
To hear somebody call being a woman a strike, like even me hearing it right now, like to hear somebody say being a woman is and it's pretty obvious that he had good intentions, you know, and that conversation probably helped you. But in my 2022 ear, you know, to hear somebody say that being a woman is a strike against you, it's hard for me to hear it right now. Like, how is that considered a strike against you? You know what I mean? So that's rough. So you get in this, you get with this first class, this LPO. You got any like standout experiences with this LPO, or did you already kind of name it?
So, and he wasn't even a first class; he was a second class. Even looking back, just pisses me off because I was also a second. I picked up second really quick when I got to the ship, but I was still junior. Like I remember this one time, we were cleaning out a magazine because we had an inspection. So we had to like sweep out. We were like in a CWIS mag on the destroyer. So it was like Ford CWIS mag. And it was like a Friday or a Thursday or whatever. And it was like, all right, y'all have to clean the magazines before we can go home. And so like all the guys are in there, and it's like me, and we had a GM who had just struck as being undez, and like one other guy who was a third class. And we're like the only ones who are cleaning this space. And I look at the guy who had just struck GM. I'm like, hey, dude, run to your shop real quick, get another sweeper, like, foxtail, whatever, so we can do this. And this guy looks at me and he yells at me in front of the rest of the unit. He was just like, you don't have any authority to be telling him what to do.
Oh,
and I'm
man.
like, I'm a second class, the same as all of you guys. This is a seaman and a third class, and we're trying to get this shit done, basically. But I looked at him, I'm like,
Yeah.
pardon my French, but I'm like, are you fucking serious? I'm like, I just kind of gestured to everybody who was just sitting around literally not cleaning. I'm like, sorry for trying to get this shit done so we can go home, guys. Like, I didn't realize that was outside of my bounds, kind of a thing. So it was things like that. And like, I have never, like, I'm very slow to temper. Like, I just don't get like rage filled very much.
Mm-hmm.
And I walked out of the magazine, and I went up to my shop, and I punched a bulkhead, and I don't punch walls at all. Like, that was the first and only time in my life I was so mad I just had to hit something. Because I was just like, you son of a bitch. Like,
Yeah.
don't act like you're some kind of hotshot sailor just because everyone defers to you because you're the most masculine dude in the division. Like, I was so over it. And then after that, I think everyone saw how mad I got. And we're like, hey, sorry about that. I'm like, yeah, you're fucking sorry.
Yeah.
That you are. Like, you guys didn't stand up for me. You guys didn't stand up to this guy who you knew who was wrong. And here we are.
That happens. We talked about that in the old episode too, how a lot of times so I got two questions. One of them is kind of like I want the tea type question, right? But then the other question is a real question. So the first question is, and I don't want to forget the second question. I might have to write it down. But the first question is, does like going through these experiences, like as you're like climbing up, in rank and stuff like that, does that make you kind of want to like put like protection around the young junior gay seller that you might see coming up in rank too, so they don't have to deal with that? Have you ever had that experience?
I swore to myself after that particular experience, and there was a couple other ones that with this particular situation, where I was like, I swear to God, if I ever become a person in a position of power or authority, I will never, ever treat my sailors like this. Like, I made a vow. I was like, I don't care if they're an idiot. I don't care if they're lazy. I refuse to treat people the way that my first year on my ship is. Like, I refuse. Like, I will not. So that kind of set like the foundation of how I wanted to be, like, LPO, work center soup, what have you, if I ever put on anchors going forward. My mentor, Dina Reese, she has a line. She's like, asshole is not a leadership skill. Like, so I kind of try and keep that too. But yeah, and like, and every time something happens, we're like, man, that was jacked up. Like, I put it in like my Navy vault to like file away. I was like, oh, okay, so I won't do that. Like, that wasn't effective. That didn't make anyone feel good. That didn't get the job done. Like, so going through, and also just like the way that you talk to people or treat people who, like, we had African-American sailors. We had a sailor whose now wife was undocumented. Like, we've had, immigrant sailors, we've had, God knows, trans sailors. Like, how do you talk with people about hard topics and still be respectful? How do you make sure that they feel that they're valued and that they can, that you value their contribution just as much as the next guy? So that's really been kind of like cornerstone of what I've been trying to do.
I think I honestly think your ignorance has to take the front seat in these conversations. Like, for me, like, that's even like in our conversation today, it's like, that's the precursor. Like, yo, there are things that I'm ignorant about and I'm seeking education. I think a lot of times people talk from this place where they trying to educate you. Like, yo, I'm Black. Like, you're not about to educate me about the Black experience. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Exactly.
It was an issue during the January 6th, the riots. It was a noose hanging, around. I remember this like vividly. But somebody, they was talking about the news, and they had a racial, like, they attributed like a racial thought to that, right? Some context. And then somebody was like, well, actually, nooses represent, like, something else, like treason.
And you're like, shut
nooses
up. Yeah,
represent high
exactly.
treason. It's like, well, they don't represent treason
Yeah.
to me. I've seen black bodies hanging from nooses, and I never said like, yo, this person got hung because they committed treason. I said this person got hung because they're black. You know what I'm saying? So
exactly.
And I always see that where somebody that's not of the, I always tell me and my mom talking, I'm like, yo, if a woman says something is offending her, I can't say, well, actually, like, I didn't intend to not offend you. No, I'm gonna back the fuck up. I'm okay. You know what I'm saying? You're offended. Let me chill out. And a lot of people think that they're like this high master of moral code for like everybody else, and it's silly, it's wrong, and weird. Damon, you got anything to add?
Well, yeah, man. I mean, you bring up a good point, man. Like, why am I gonna go out there and try to educate something that I know that I don't know nothing about, or is not educated on, right? I bring back the thing you said about being a strike against you, man. Like, man, like, we talking about 2022, being a woman, being gay, being, who you are as a strike against you is crazy to me. And I'm here to tell you, man, that I go to bat for stuff like that, man. Like me, put me there, put me in the line, put me in the den. We can go fight about stuff like this all day. But it's hard to see, right? And it's hard to see for me because I've seen the Navy change, right? I've seen the Navy change. I came in '98, so I've seen the Navy change. Even before the Navy, growing up in Mississippi, man, I never seen like really like gay people.
Yeah.
Period. Like this is like when I grew up, right? Then coming into the Navy and talking with different people have, phobias and all this type of stuff. Man, I'm an open book. I'm open. You know what I mean? I listen to people, I hear them talk. And then once you start getting in leadership positions and becoming teams, seem like a lot of that stuff, it matters. Being a team, you want everybody to be on the same playing field for one, and you want everybody to be part of the team.
Yeah.
It's no isolation. It's no nothing. Now, me personally, if I feel like you being isolated, I may go a little bit harder to make sure you think or that you're not, isolated. But it's hard for me, like when you talk about this stuff, and we for a fact, I'm telling you, we know it still happens today. This stuff still happens today.
Absolutely.
But it's hard for me to sit here and listen to it and be like, man, this is like if I was at a command and it was happening, I'd be like, it can't be happening at my command. That would be my first thought. It's not happening. But what I'm here to tell you, if someone bring this up to me, I know for a fact it's happening. You know what I mean? I'm not going to be like, that's not. No, I know no one is going out their way to say this is happening to them or that it's happening to whoever, right? So it's still happening. We know it, but how? Why? Them are the questions that I got. Like, it's 2000, and I keep bringing this up. It's 2022, man. What more? When we talk about women in power, we talking about the gays, we talking about whatever. The things that are being accomplished, the diverse that we have been seeing that's been making our, making America great. We still go back to some craziness all the time. And we see it every day. You turn on Facebook for freaking 10 minutes and you see shit like this.
So that's a scary place. Facebook is a scary place. I got
scary.
Well, yeah, and honestly, if it wasn't for that, then I wouldn't. If it wasn't for glass shit, I would not be on Facebook.
It's a scary place. That's what I know that for sure, man. I saw Xbox post something on Black History Month, and it went crazy in the comment section. But so my one question for you, and at first I thought it was like a tea kind of question, but it's not. It's more of a, because I'm sure you've dealt with people in the closet. At commands, ships that probably people wouldn't even expect, maybe some khaki, maybe like a bunch of different. So on my last ship, I remember one of the gay sellers one of the sellers I would talk to a lot of times, like a lot is, as a gay guy. And he was like, hey, Chief, you'd be surprised how many people, in the closet that then made passes at me.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? I'm like, for real? He's like, yeah, you'd be
Yeah.
surprised. You know, and I'm like, damn. So and
Yeah.
that's something that people still struggle with, huh?
Oh, absolutely. And it's the thing with being in a closet is it's not anyone's position or job to force anyone out of a closet. Like as a president of a glass chapter or as just a gay person, I'm not here to be like, did you hear that so so? Because that's I feel like that is such a horrid like betrayal of
Yeah.
trust. And I feel that depending on people's backgrounds, where they come from, because yeah, like you might come from a very conservative, very potentially conservative religious environment where you're dealing with your own, like coming out to yourself is a process. No one just wakes up one day and it's like totally gay. Like there's a lot of soul searching and trying to figure this shit out depending on how old you are. Like my wife came out at I think 16.
Yeah.
I was or 14 actually. I was 18, and it's all just different situations. A lot of times people, leave to grow up and join the Navy or join the military to try and figure a lot of that out. I've had a lot of sailors come up to me. Like I had actually I remember this one time. I just started glass at Great Lakes, and we had these flyers. So the glass logo is a rainbow anchor. So we had these flyers that we're putting all over the base, and I went to the chaplain's office, and I was just like, hey, are you guys okay with us putting maybe these here as like brochures, kind of a thing? And there was this retired RP. This guy he'd done like 20 or 30 years as an RP, and he looked kind of awkward, and I was like, totally get it. Like if you're not comfortable, we can put these elsewhere. I don't want to, especially in the chap's office, like I don't want to feel like you need to do this. I would just appreciate maybe taking
Mhm.
time. So I started talking with him, and this guy, spent an entire career in the Navy and now is a civilian working still in the chap's office. And he was kind of like quiet, and he was just like, my sister's been with her wife for 20 years, and I was like, dude, that's awesome, congratulations. And he took a breath and he sighed and he looked down. He's like, and my husband and I have been together for 25 years.
That's good
And
stuff.
I was like flabbergasted, and I was like,
Yeah.
oh wow. And he started crying. He's like, that's the first time I've been able to say that in this room. He's like, and I retired as an RP. Like,
Wow.
he's like, this is the first time I've been able to say
Yeah.
that on base, And I was just like, so here are the flyers. Let me know if you have any questions, because I didn't know how to deal with that kind of emotionally charged of a situation. But I was like, holy shit, like this guy, like finally felt that, as an adult, like I know so many adults who, have spouses and kids, like a heterosexual spouse and kids, and then come out later in
Yeah.
life because they're like, now I'm in a place where I can be true to that, like how does that look for your family? How does that look for what have you? And then a lot of people still have to worry about, staying in the closet when they go home. Can't tell, they're like, oh, like I'm not on the ship, but I can't tell my family, so don't post any pictures of me on Facebook. I'm like, damn, dude, like I'm glad like you can be here with us and we can work through some of that because we have similar experiences. But man, like but even then, like my mom was so afraid of me being in the military, and I think always was just kind of afraid for me out in the
Yeah.
world being gay, until I told her that I was going to the White House, and she busted down crying, and she's like, how can they hurt my daughter if she's going to the White House
Yeah.
for this kind of a thing? Like that level of acceptance, even though I was like, yeah, I'm not changing the fact that I'm gay. Like I'm super fine. Like I'm cool with this. This is great. But for her fear went away when she was able to see that kind of recognition that it was going to
Yeah.
kind of thing. So I mean, like, yeah, it's scary, like coming out, but yes, like there's definitely like the joke of like gay underway, or it's not queer
Yeah.
if it's on the pier kind of a thing. Like there are definitely some people who, when they're not home,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So just thinking about that, like just thinking about, I don't know, it's just a tough thought, to just to suppress like a whole part of who you are. I've been in rooms with like people
Mhm.
where like they might have hated a movie, right? Like, yeah, that movie sucked. That shit sucked. And I'm the dude like, well, actually, like I kind of liked it. Like, let me act like it sucked too. Like yeah,
Yeah.
it sucked, guys. Yeah.
Yo, boo.
Meanwhile, I'm
Yeah.
like, yo, I Robot was actually pretty decent. One of Will Smith's better movies. So, but
Yeah.
just to not be able to like talk about your sexuality and stuff. And I say like, so I honestly like we've been dealing with this kind of like, and I got to be a little bit discreet, because I don't really know how to talk about it yet. But we've been dealing with this kind of like in our family, and I think some people believe, one of our family members wants to come out, right? And the craziest thing about it
Mhm.
is like, if that were to be true, like I'm like waiting, like I'm like at the finish line with like open arms, ready to be like,
Yeah.
yo, yeah, like
Come on,
yo,
you can
like
do it.
yo, this
Yeah, yeah,
is
yeah.
great. Like I can't wait. Like, are you dating? Like, the biggest thing I don't want to happen is for
Yeah.
you to mess with a scumbag, no matter if that scumbag is a male, no matter if that scumbag is a woman. Just pick the right people, and,
Mhm.
and love is love. But I feel weird that it's 2022, and like, I might have somebody in my family that's questioning this. Is it okay? I'm like, yo, I'm okay. Like, I'm
Mhm.
almost angry. Like, yo, I'm okay. Like, just I can't wait. Like, but it's like, you gotta respect that person. Yeah,
Put me in,
you
coach.
gotta
Yeah.
respect that
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
person, and like understand, like they might have other things that's like holding them back from, like you said, like they might have other obstacles that's holding them back from feeling like, they want to come out. And I'm just a guy like, well, when you do, I'm
Yeah.
right here, right here waiting. But so I'm
Well,
listening.
yeah. I was just like, a good way to kind of do that, and it's like a subtle way. For instance, um, is like, say in your email signature or in your whatever, use
Yeah.
your pronouns. You're like, oh yeah, like my pronouns are she, her, hers, because people who aren't kind of in tune to say like gender identity or being LGBT supportive would not be putting their pronouns in their email signature, kind of a thing. But you see that and you're like, oh, this person's putting their pronouns. Oh, maybe I could maybe talk to them about my pronouns that are a given, kind of like, it's small things like that to be like
Yeah.
ready to talk when you are, kind of a thing. Like, you know, or even just in regular conversation, not be like, well, how about that Ellen? She's great, right? But just, if something comes up, you're like, yeah, like, just have it be like a normal part of a conversation of, oh yeah, I heard the so and so came out. Isn't that great? And then just continue the conversation, because that will let them know that you are a safe person to talk to, and that if when that time comes, that you might be one of the first people to go to, because you have already laid that
All right,
groundwork
so you just
in
brought up
subtle
something
ways.
that I'm kind of glad you brought it up, because I wouldn't have thought about it, but it's actually something that I could be educated on, pronouns. So
Hmm.
I don't
Yes.
use pronouns. It's a new thing, and I'm like, it's new to me. I'm like the guy that waited a long
Okay.
time to start using the iPhone, or I waited a long time to like go
Hmm.
to Blu-ray, I waited a long time to go digital. So I still got like 250
Hmm.
DVDs downstairs,
Yeah.
right? So so I just always kind of wait for a while, Um, so with
Hmm.
pronouns, is it like now a general assumption that if somebody doesn't have them, that they might not, like they might be a little ignorant toward
No, I have to laugh because you're like, if you don't have them, I'm like, you just said guy. Guy is a, like, you use he,
no,
him.
what I
That
mean
is your
about it
pronoun.
is use them
Like,
when we write.
yeah.
Like, so if I don't, like, for instance, if
Oh yeah, no. This
yeah,
is very new. Yeah, this is very new. I saw that there was I can't remember where I was reading it. There was an article about whether or not, like, for like a proper military email signature, if you should be able to. And I'm like,
yeah,
I'm just gonna
it's
do
people doing
it.
it.
Yeah.
But my biggest thing
Yeah.
is, if I don't do
Yeah.
it,
So
is it being assumed that, okay, all right.
Well, I don't know
no,
anything about
honestly,
pronouns. I don't even hardly know what you're even talking about right
so
now. I'm like
so
lost.
pro exactly. So you have in the English language, and obviously it's different for, like, say, like gendered languages like, say, Spanish or Italian,
Mhm.
where you have like a chair is masculine but a blanket is feminine, kind of like L or la kind of thing. We don't deal with that in the English language. So your pronoun, like, I use she, her. So like, if you're referring to Anne's bicycle, it'd be her bicycle.
Mhm.
Okay. If you identify as a male, so this is going to get really technical. Your sexual orientation and your gender are two very different things. A lot of times they get lumped together as part of like the queer community, but I identify as a female. Like, my brain and my body align, basically. This is not even getting into like people who are intersex, who have like multiple, like 2 different types of genitals. Not even getting into that. So say if someone is trans, they might physically say be female, but they identify as a male. So they're living their life as male. They see themselves as a male. So I have a very dear friend of mine who I was with on Milius, and he's a trans man. He's now done post-surgery. He's got a full bushy beard, but he was in female birthing. But everyone knew that he was a man. Like they knew that he identified as a man, so everyone used like male pronouns for him. By the time he left, he was wearing male uniform at like his award ceremony kind of a thing. So if you know that Lincoln is a trans man or identifies as a man, the pronouns you would use for him are he, him. You would refer to him in a masculine pronoun. But if you didn't know that he was trans, or if you're being like, I don't believe this stuff, you would refer to Lincoln as a female, she, hers. So pronouns and being respectful of how you refer to someone is a acknowledgement of understanding that you see them as a male or a female, how they choose to be perceived.
Okay.
Or how they, So if someone's like, hey, my name is Anne, my pronouns are he, him, you might be like, okay, this person is probably trans, or I'm just going to default to what they would like to be referred to. Now, there is another option for like, say, they, them. So you can refer to a single person in a they, them pronoun. Like, I called Dave, they're going to show up at 10. Okay. You're still referring to Dave, but you're using a they, them pronoun. That's a lot of times used by people who are genderqueer. So they don't feel like they fit in either a male or a female box. They're in the middle. They see themselves in more of a gray area. So people, I feel, kind of get freaked out and turned off by it, because unless it's kind of explained to you, and it does take practice. Like my wife uses she and they. So I try to make a point to use they when referring to the person I'm married to, even though it's just the one person. So like they are working on their PhD, as opposed to she is working on her PhD.
And then,
kind of a
and
thing.
then
So,
Damon, like, so for instance, like people been adding it to like their email signatures, for instance. So I got some junior sellers that work for me, that have added it into their emails signatures already.
Okay.
If you're a CMC, because we got some CMCs that listen, and if you know that they can or can't, I don't think it's something that they can't do, because we can add quotes in our email signatures, or stuff like that. So I don't think it's
exactly.
But hey, that's, man, like you just kind of really taught us something here. So I really appreciate that. You know what I'm saying?
Of course. And honestly, like I feel that when it comes to like queer people, LGBT plus people, I feel like people are so afraid to ask questions to clarify, because a lot of times people are like, you misgender this person, or you're being homophobic. And it's like, if you don't know and it's not explained to you in a simple, straightforward way, then it's just going to block you off from even wanting to deal with it, which is going to make it harder to work down the line with people who identify as certain.
I think my biggest question, and if you do have a chance, and I know you said you connected to a few of your friends are trans, I would like to talk to them, because, and I'll throw the question in here, but I'm not going to ask you to answer it, and it's not even a question. But I would like to talk to them about sports between men's sports and women's sports. Yep. And I just would like to see what their approach is, or their thought process is, because I almost think people would be surprised by, their thoughts on it, but I don't know. So if you do have a friend, please, if you could loop us into that friend of yours, if they were military, I would love that to have a conversation. I want to go back to a place real quick that you were at. And I just want to talk about how common of because I mean, so you're going through, this experience. It's a unique experience because you're in a division with this extra super conservative person. And before I get there, let me kind of ask this question, because I assume that it's some gay conservatives in the world. I don't think that like liberal and gay has to be connected all the time. Am I wrong?
Correct. Yeah. I think before we get into obviously the super conservative dude I worked with. So the thing with being gay is, as a white person, I had white parents. I grew up in a largely white community. If you're a black person, odds are you probably had black parents growing up in a black community. Same with Asian and Hispanic. If you are Jewish or you are Catholic or you are Christian, you grow up in these communities where
Yeah.
everyone is the same as you for the most part. Okay. Being gay is an identity that cuts through all of that, because you can be a gay person who is also Jewish, or you can be a trans person who is also Latino, and you might not see anyone else in that community
Yeah.
who is like you. So when you do go out and find other gay people, it's a very strong knit community because you're coming from so many places. But that does tend to create problems, because during the gay rights movement, a lot of times the more quote unquote respectable looking queer people were white
Mm-hmm.
cis men who were able bodied and looked a particular way. Like if you think of like the idea of what a gay man looks like, you probably have an image in your head of what a gay man looks like. So during the gay rights movement, a lot of other people, a lot of say like trans people or drag queens or people of different races or other minority things were pushed to the side in order to kind of lend an air of legitimacy to the gay rights movement, because they didn't want to scare anybody. They didn't want to send this whole plethora of diversity that really is encompassed in the gay community. So when you say that about like other conservative gay people, absolutely. Like there's literally a group called the Log Cabin Republicans who are gay Republicans, kind of a thing. The reason why, say, gay people as a general, like this is a general brush, why most of them are at least left leaning or more liberal, is because the policies that are voted on by the two political parties, more often than not, does not have as much discrimination on the left than on the right.
Yeah,
So
the reason why I bring that up, and it's less of a question than like a statement, but the reason why I bring it up is because people kind of put people in. I see it a lot with people, conservatives, when they talk about liberals. I see liberals do things too when they talk about conservatives, but it's no prescription for a conservative. There's no prescription for a liberal. But I see that sometimes, even when it comes to like race, race kind of stuff, where somebody might say, "Oh, look at all of those liberals." It's like, no, it's just a group of black people. like you know what I'm saying? It's not a group of liberals. So, all right. So this conservative second class leader that you have, that's a common, so as unique a story as it is to be this gay woman in a division with a kind of like a right-leaning, closed-minded leader, it's still a common military story, that whole aspect of having to wait for somebody to leave, and I bring that up, and especially, thinking about the experience you got, Damon, like in the Navy too, like where like how many damn commands we've been to where it's like, yo, all right, when this person leaves, I'm gonna be free to be able to do this or free to be able to do that. That's crazy to have to deal with that thought. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's and as out and active as I was in the gay community, I still did not feel empowered enough to stand up for myself the way that I look back on now. Man, you should have said this, or you should have, you should have, could have, would have all day long about how things could have been different. But for me, just surviving that time until he was gone, and I was able to be taken more seriously, not just because of obviously the gay stuff that I did, but because, I was better at being a CWIS tech. I was better at maintenance. I was better at troubleshooting. I was able to step up for my division the way that I think that they respected more than all the other extracurriculars that I.
So after this command
kind of
experience, was everything else pretty much smooth sailing? Did you it's crazy. We done had this great conversation, right? Now, my question is, did you get a glass chapter on at this command? Did you start one?
On Milius? Oh yeah. Milius is the first
Okay, so
afloat
this was
chapter
Milius that
of
you were
Glass.
on with this leader,
Um,
and and this was the only
mhm,
ship you were on
mhm.
before you went
Yeah.
reserve. Okay, all right, cool.
Correct. Yeah, so it was, because I was on Milius for about 4.5 years at that point, by the time I left. But yeah, no, got a Glass chapter started, like Pride months, like we had the Higgins had a chapter, like I spoke at their Pride month, like went on the Ike and, to, all these other all these other commands for like Pride month events and talking to them about it. And it was interesting too that you say like, waiting until people leave. I've also been in a weird position by virtue of being who I am in this program, where if something bad happens, like you were talking earlier about, like, you get that phone call, something bad happened. I imagine as chiefs, as senior chiefs, having to get that phone call in the middle of the night that something bad happened. And it turned into, whenever something bad happened to a gay sailor, even though I was an E5, I'd be the one getting that phone call at 2 a.m. And I remember, and I'm not going to say where it was, and I'm not going to say what kind of what ship it was. But I got a phone call from a lesbian who I knew in Great Lakes, and she was stationed on a destroyer, and it was the same platform as mine. And she said that the only openly gay man on the ship had basically completed suicide while on watch. And I was like, well, what's going on? Like, what happened? Like, what led to this? And basically, like, the command climate was so toxic that gay sailors would basically not be sleeping in berthing. They would be sleeping in lockable compartments. All the female identified like gay people, like all the lesbians, were getting like sexually harassed all the time. And this one out gay man sailor had basically begged to be transferred. He's like, I cannot deal with deployment. Like, I won't be able to make it. And the command was like, yeah, absolutely, you can, we'll get you out of here. And then like 3 weeks before deployment, they told him that he was going to have to go on deployment. And he basically was on topside rover and pulled out his 9mm and blew his brains out. I don't know if it was the quarterdeck, but it was somewhere on the ship. And so they recall everybody back to the ship because they have to tell the command what happened. And this person who I knew was standing in ranks while the captain is telling the crew that this guy had just died on the ship. And people were saying shit like, well, I guess it's too soon to order a meat lover's pizza. It's just another faggot dead, blah, blah, blah. While this guy had just died. And I remember just being so mad because this was the exact same type of ship I was on. Like what they do. Like, we were both BMDs. And whereas my ship, like, we're bringing our gay spouses to the Christmas party, and we had a bunch of out gay people, and we had a really active Glass chapter. And I was just like, it's the same job of the ship. We're all doing the exact same work. And on this ship, all the gay people are having to lock the door when they sleep because of harassment. And so the sailor was like, had asked the command, like, can I give training on being gay in the military? Can I start a Glass chapter? And the command was like, no, we don't want anything to do with that. So she told me, and there's a Master Chief, retired Master Chief, Dwayne Beebe, who I think he retired this last year. And I had worked with him a lot on Glass stuff. And he was like, we got to put in an equal opportunity complaint. Got to let somebody know so the command can be investigated for harassment. And at this time, sexual orientation was not covered under equal opportunity. So there could not be an actual investigation based on sexual orientation. So the command didn't get any kind of investigation. And so it was basically like, because they had a shit triad, this guy, his death and suicide, and just the command climate for all the other sailors on that ship, there's nothing we could do about it. And then, I, myself and Master Chief wrote point papers to submit up to include sexual orientation into equal opportunity. And then a year later, we get sexual orientation and equal opportunity. But it's a year too.
Yeah, 2018.
Yeah.
Right? That was 2018. They changed
Well,
it.
yeah, but it was too late for that one sailor. And so, like, the same sailor who I started the program for, the trans man, it was after the initial repeal. Like, they were they had stopped all the separations for people who were trans because they wanted to like a working group to see if it was feasible to have out trans people on the ship. And so I get a phone call from his wife at like 1:00 in the morning, and I was like, oh shit, because I knew he was on deployment. And Monica was like, so someone outed Dylan. I'm like, what do you mean someone outed him? I guess like he had been at quarters one day. And sorry, I don't mean to vent, but like these stories are these are like cornerstone stories of my thing.
Go ahead, you good.
He was at quarters one day, and his chief is like, hey, Duncan, I need you to go to admin. You got to sign something. And he's thinking he has to send his page 2 or some shit. He goes up there, and it's a letter separating him from the Navy because they found out that he was trans. And he hadn't told anyone on the ship. He had stopped taking hormones because he knew he wasn't allowed to while on deployment. He's in the middle of the Gulf, by the way. Like, they're in the middle of deployment. Again, he's the only breadwinner for the ship. And so he calls his wife and is freaking out about it. And so she calls me about, like, what do we do? I happen to have the guidance just in a Word document about, hey, they're halting all separations, blah, blah, blah. Sent her the information, sent my buddy the information on a ship so he could have a hard copy, black and white. You cannot separate me right now for this. And so it saved him having to get immediately kicked off the ship, kind of a thing.
That's crazy, man.
So when you...
Isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, all he wanted to do was serve his country. Like, he loved being in the Navy. And all the bullshit rigmarole that he had to go through and that his family had to go through is just astounds me to this day. Like, it drives me crazy just thinking about it. Like, yeah.
Yeah. When you get these phone calls, though, are you taking them like, is it like for you, like personally, is it like the Bruce Willis approach? Like, hey, all I wanted to do was come down here and do this today. Now I gotta go save the world again or whatever like that. And that's like me making it crazy.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But are you like, yo, I can't wait for another? Are you like at the phone line just waiting to get like, a phone call?
Usually when I get a phone call, it's not a good thing. Unless like I get like a Facebook message of like, hey, can we start a chapter? And I'm like, hell yeah, I got my glass folder on my computer and I can just copy and paste everything over to you. It's easy day. Especially when I was active duty, I felt I was more in the fight just because it was my day to day. So I could get like immediately, like, I had the people higher ups that I could call. Like I have Brigadier General Tammy Smith. She was the highest ranking out gay person in the military. She just retired. Like I have her on like my Facebook, and I can be like, ma'am, I hate to bother you, but I need help with this and this. So having the gay network, so to speak, multiple Master Chiefs. Like I don't know if y'all have heard of Kathy Hansen, Master Chief. She was the first female Master Chief on a carrier, so she knew a bunch of people. Like being able to use a network to get help to people who needed it quickly, as opposed to like an E5 from a little destroyer in San Diego to try and stop separations and to do investigations. Like I tried to utilize my network in a way that was the most efficient to try and solve problems. And also too, like, I mean, when the trans ban got repealed and then we woke up to a tweet from Trump that it got reinstated after all these people had just come.
I was just about to ask you about that. I was about to ask you about that.
Yeah, like that. I mean, waking up to that after we had fought so hard and so many people put their trust to come out and had been guaranteed and promised that it was safe, to have that information come in the form of a tweet, that all of that work you had done and all those people's lives who it mattered to were people that you knew and cared about, all of a sudden they're back in limbo again. And then no one ever like, does that mean they're going to roll back Don't Ask, Don't Tell? Are they going to, what are they going to do?
It was weird for me, a weird phase for me, a straight man, just wondering like how, as a chief, like how do we approach information? You know what I mean with that? So I'm listening to you though.
No, absolutely. I mean, and it's that kind of stuff where when these big seismic shifts happen or when something on a more personal level happens, I got decently good at providing resources very quickly to people is like a triage kind of a thing. You know what I mean? It's like, shit, you need this and this and this form. Cool. I'm gonna call this guy who knows that chief and do it that way, and just try and kind of put down like a blanket suppressant to try and give people time to work through these issues kind of. But when it comes to like that suicide, it's like, what else can you do except for just get just crushingly angry about it, you know?
Yeah, that's rough. And I think I knew about the suicide, but I don't think I've ever known the story behind it. So I think you just gave me the story behind that suicide.
Mm-hmm.
So because I think we had like a full circle moment here.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of like thinking about it, like reflecting on where you were in that. I think it was like a barracks room or something as an E3 after drinking with Sam Adams, right? It was Sam
Yeah,
Adams you had,
but I was
you and your
drinking
group.
tequila at Sam Adams. There was a brew pub
Oh,
on
okay.
base, the Sam Adams. Yeah.
Okay, so tequila, probably some regular cheap tequila
Oh yeah.
at the brew pub. And just, wanting to see something out of something that doesn't exist at all.
Mm-hmm.
10 years, 10-year anniversary, 10 years from, that moment, maybe 11 years from that moment. What do you think about the progress with both Glass and the Navy as a whole?
I look at Glass and it's kind of, I feel like it's to the point now where it's self-sufficient. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I'll sit back and watch. Like I was in Naples this last month, and there was a sailor who I was working with, and I had mentioned Glass, and he's like, oh yeah, he's like, I remember when I was in Bahrain there was a Glass chapter. I was like, oh yeah, I'm the original founder of the program, and he started like almost crying and like wanted to give me a hug because of what it meant to him when he was there, or
Yeah.
knowing people who it affected and helped. So it's never been about me, about what I've done with it. It's been about what people in these chapters have done for each other and been able to help each other and have it grow that way. I feel incredibly humbled and honored every time someone reaches out. Like literally last night, someone reached out to me, and I kind of just like showed my wife like, hey, look, I got another chapter. Starting my great glass fleet, as I like to call it.
Okay.
Yeah, I had this one Marine Corps. He was a gay Marine Corps officer before Glass really kind of exploded, and he was a part of another gay organization. And I remember this one time I was talking about, yeah, it'd be really great to start, Glass chapters out here in San Diego. And he knows shit. He was like, I think you need to be a little bit more significant rank to have that kind of impact. And that just pissed me off to the point where I was like, cool. And now I'm like over here laughing at, probably over 100 chapters of Glass that we have military wide at this point.
Bam.
But and that's the thing. I was just like, I'm like, oh really? Okay, like let's fucking dance. Like let's do it. Like, I'm like, don't tell me I can't do it. I've already done it, kind of a thing. Like, don't tell me it can't grow because there's a need in people who are actually actively wanting this to be a thing, and it's actually helping people, at the deck plate level. But yeah, I mean, like 10 years looking back at like, I returned home from my last deployment, and the next day marriage equality was granted in the United States. Like the Supreme Court decision came down that next morning. And I was like, I've deployed, and I was doing the same job as everybody else. And now that I am home, I just now have the same rights as everybody else.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff. I mean, like we've seen a lot of shit, like repeal of DOMA, which allowed, federal benefits to gay spouses, and the Supreme Court decisions. And now we have laws in like Florida where it's like, you can't say gay, you can't teach gay history. Texas, if you have a trans kid, the parents can be tried for child abuse. You have these constant bombardment of things that just keep on coming up that are not only affecting me personally and affecting the people who I know and care about personally, but affecting these whole swaths of community. How do you, you just got to kind of, put your head up and funnel that frustration and anger into something productive. And I think that's just been kind of the hallmark of Glass over the last decade, and definitely as a scaffolding of my career. I mean, I've built a framework of Glass that I've used as my framework for everything else that I do.
Mm-hmm.
So
what's next for you?
what is next for me? Well, if I don't get recalled because Russia is being ridiculous, just, doing my time here in the reserves. Like, again, like, trying to be the best yeoman I can be, which is kind of funny considering I'm basically trying to teach myself how to be a yeoman. Like, I took the chief exam, like I made boards first time up. I'm hoping to make board again this year.
Good stuff.
Continuing on that way, and trying to take the opportunities that are presented to me as they come. And also, having a nice work-life balance where, for the most part, I get to come home every day. Granted, if I'm not doing brewery work, I'm always doing Navy work, but that's just the nature of the beast. So, but yeah, just trying to.
Hey, Damon, we're going to have to swing by the brewery, man.
Colorado, huh?
We're going to have to see if we're in town, we're going to have to swing by the brewery for sure. So I do want to, is it anything that we missed?
I don't think so. I think I really do appreciate your willingness to be open and ask questions and see from, again, a perspective that you might not have already had. As a gay person, I would never expect a straight person to truly understand what it's like being gay. And I feel like I try and take that perspective of like I am not a man, I am not disabled, I am not a religious minority, like I am not an ethnic minority, like I'm not any of these things, but I try and keep my perspective of how much I would like support and people to believe my stories as a gay person. I feel helps me better relate to other people who might be facing some type of discrimination. So,
Okay.
But
so
no, I definitely appreciate.
I'm gonna put you on the spot real quick. We do books, so we talk books. We get book suggestions from our guests a lot. Like most episodes, we started out. You said you went back, so if you went back, we started out. Damon and I would have a book, that we talked about, but at some point in Damon's life, he got too busy to read.
Yeah, man. I'm a busy guy, and I'm a busy guy.
So he got too busy to read. So it's just been me. It's just been me hanging on by a thread with these books. So whenever we get a guest, I always try to see if the guest has a book suggestion or any. It doesn't have to be a book. It could be a tech manual. It could be any kind of form of reference that you could suggest to the listeners, or something that meant a lot to you. Do you have one?
So when I'm at the brewery, I work 12-hour shifts and I work overnight. So I usually just put in my earbuds and I'll like binge podcasts. Like I did an 11-hour binge on the Revolutionary War, and I was insufferable for like days afterwards. I'm like, you guys want to talk about George Washington? And everyone's like, please leave us alone. Stop talking.
I did that too. I did
Oh my God.
that with him. He was George Washington was
he's a badass,
like a fucking superstar.
I know, right? So obviously I would say like Revolutions podcast is great. They do like American Revolution, French Revolution, Haitian Revolution. But I was actually reading a book right now called What We Don't Talk About When We Talk About Fat. And this author she's an author and a fats right activist, and basically talks about how discrimination of people who are not normal size is so inherent in the country. Like talking about like the racist and eugenicist origin of the BMI, and why we still use it, and how it doesn't actually have any indication of health, and like trying to pull these pieces. Her name is Aubrey Gordon. Trying to pull these pieces into like, say, the Navy. Why do we use BMI as an indicator of health when it doesn't actually tell you how healthy a person is? It just tells you what their body fat is. Like, and even then, it doesn't do a good job at it. So I've been kind of trying to do deep dive into things that normally I would not think about. Like I've never thought about, say, like people who are obese or fat or anything like that, and about the discrimination that they inherently face in society. And it's been a great book because she talks a lot about her own experiences with like disordered eating and stuff that I know that a lot of our sailors deal with every time we have to do a weigh-in, about binging and purging and anorexia and all these sorts of things that, a lot of, especially female sailors, have to deal with to try and stay within regs.
So. Yeah, I mean, when I dealt with that when I was a heavier weight, I dealt with a doctor thinking that I was looking for an excuse to get out the Navy. I think I talked about it on some episode here, but I remember
Yeah.
being a heavier weight and having a knee injury, and a doctor like, well, what you just trying to med board out or whatever. I'm like, yo, I'm
Yeah.
a EP guy. Like, I want to leave my
Yeah.
division. I don't want to med board out. Then I remember I lost 90 pounds. And when I went back to that same doctor, like, this dude was treating me like I was Michael Jordan. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
hey, dudes, whatever you want to do, boom, boom, boom. I'm like, damn, this is completely different than the way you treated me when I was 270. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
So and so I've been on both sides of the fence. So I've seen people act different because my weight was a little different. You know what I'm saying? And I learned a little bit how to maneuver when I gained, a little bit about myself. Like, I'm a little up in my weight right now, but I maneuver like a little different where I don't go through those same, experiences that I went through before.
Yeah.
So my last big question before we tell you how much we appreciate you is, where can they find you if they're looking for you?
So you can find me on Facebook at YN1 Geiman. Like, I'm pretty easy to find. On Instagram, I'm Gray Sailor, Gray Sailor, because all y'all listening, I got a almost full head of gray hair, even though I'm in my early 30s. All right. Or they can also email me if you if you're Navy and you want information on glass. I'm in the Global. You can search YN1 Geiman. I'll pop up. Always, doesn't matter day or night. Always happy to answer questions or talk to you about, if you're going through anything. I married a therapist, so I've gotten a lot better at trying to communicate and help people who might be going through some hard times. So yeah, just reach out if you have any questions or you want to touch base.
Yeah. So congrats on 10 years, 100 chapters, give or take, over 100 chapters. Thank you for sitting with us, keeping
Absolutely.
it real. You listen, so I know you know to keep it real. So we appreciate it. Man, you always have, if you need any reference as far as chief stuff and stuff like that, you always have me as a reference. I'm sure Damon will probably say the same thing when he comes around. But like, I appreciate you. I'm probably gonna listen to this episode myself a few times, to kind of make sure I'm educated on some stuff. And yeah, if ever you need to come back around, if anything happens with class, or if you need to come talk to us about anything else, just hit me up. I would love to have you, come talk to us again. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And again, right back at you. If you have any, like you were saying, like a potential family member or any sailors or whatever, even if it's not class related, like if they have any questions, or if you have any questions outside of this, I'm always here to answer anything. So
yeah, and first off, great stories too. Oh my goodness, I can probably go back and listen to this just because of the stories you got. You got some great stories. But with that being said, hey, we're gonna give you flowers now, though. You know what I mean? From the time, with all the stuff that's going on with not just being gay, women, and everything. Just remember, you're a part of that. You were part of that movement. Where everything's at right now in 2022. So sometimes you gotta be humble. I know you always want to be humble, but you was part of that though. So we want to give you flowers for that. But great having you on here. Hopefully we can have you on here again. Yeah, man, it's great stories and most definitely glad to talk to you. Good to talk to you.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
but again, thank you for giving me the platform and for also doing what y'all do in the podcast. Like again, granted, I just did a huge deep dive of all of your back episodes. I'm like, I need to break this up a little bit. I need to listen to something that's not just you guys for a little bit. Like, try to break it up because I was just doing like hardcore, like full shifts of just you two.
Hey,
I'm like, all right.
you know what's so funny? What's funny is that we haven't brung up the whole episode on where we was from, and then you said it. So I know you have been listening. He's like,
exactly. I was
definitely.
like, I'm like Philly and Mississippi, and talking about like, I was like, yeah, I'm like, like I didn't want to take notes and be like, when you said this and this in this episode, I didn't want to go that hard, but
yeah.
I was tempted to.
Most definitely.
No, but thank you guys so much for doing what you do, and allowing the ability to actually no shit permission to speak freely about, the way that things actually are in the military. I really do appreciate it.
All right, well, thank you. We still got to kick it for a little bit. We got to talk about this Band of Brothers episode that Damon didn't finish. But we appreciate you, and, can't wait to talk to you again. That was great.
That was great.
Really, really good conversation. I'm glad I was able to have it. You know what I'm saying? I learned a whole lot of stories, and I think that a lot of people are going to enjoy that, that aspect of the podcast, like that episode.
Yeah, man.
I think is going. This episode, I think is going to be good.
Probably, man, like when it comes to content and storylines and all this type of stuff, this is most definitely one of our best episodes, and I most definitely think our listeners gonna love this, man. Like this was good. This was no shit. It was good, man. And I learned a lot because I'm from, like I was saying in the pod, man. I'm from Mississippi, man. This is this ain't what we talk about, ain't out loud. I mean, we know people, whatever, but we don't this ain't like a conversational. We just always talking about. So this is a great conversation for me.
Yeah, she schooled me on I've known about pronouns and stuff like that, but she broke some extra stuff down that I wasn't really tracking.
Yeah, you guys lost me on the pronouns, man. And I had to hold up.
Yeah, I'm glad you was able to get brought up to speed.
Yeah, man, I was lost on that one.
It's some good information, man. Yeah. Some real good stuff, man. I would love to sit with her again. YN1 Geiman. All right, so here we go. Band of Brothers, right? Episode 7, right? I'm starting to huff and puff at this point because when this show is over, I'm gonna miss it, Yeah. So I'll start off by saying this was my favorite episode so far, man. And I'm gonna run through some stuff because I think you're still watching it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So this was my favorite episode. And I mean, if the fans don't know, to be transparent, you just got back. You just got back from Hawaii, and just the dedication, man, and commitment to just come back and sit
around the grind, man. Around the grind.
Admirable, man. Admirable. I mean, so yeah. So the first part, it's called The Breaking Point, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the first part, the confessional where the guy come in and, he's talking about just you never forget these events, It's a lot of death in this episode, a lot. I think we see more people die in this episode than any other episode.
Yeah.
And if you halfway through, it's still more.
Yeah.
So this is January 2nd, 1945, Belgium, right there in Belgium. Who, he pulled a cheddar bob, man. Shot himself, And at first I was he pulled a cheddar bob, and I thought it was funny. That's my brother calling me. It's his birthday. Let me see what he talk about. All right, so back to it. So if anybody hears this, not going to be clean. That was an edit point. My brother called me. He had a bachelor party for one of my friends who's getting married. So they going crazy. So that was an edit point. But all right, so we back. So we're at everybody looking for Dyke, right? That's throughout the whole episode.
Yeah.
Where's Dyke? Where's Dyke? Where's Dyke? And it's told. This episode's told from the point of view of Lipton, First Sergeant Lipton. Man, it's the best. This to me is the best episode, best point of view, best everything, man. And it's crazy how the show could take every single character and make them important, every episode, new character. So and he was talking about Dyke. He said Dyke wasn't a bad leader because he made bad decisions. He was a bad leader because he made no decisions. And that
was hardcore.
Right. I know that stuck out, man.
Yeah.
It's funny because I'm gonna give away most of the episode as I talk. But that whole aspect of talking shit about your leaders when they ain't around, everybody was talking about Dyke. Whenever Dyke wasn't around, they had something to say about Dyke, man. But Lipton, man, he did what you supposed to do, no matter how he felt about Dyke. Yes. He stopped. He came and he kind of stopped it. You know what I mean? I think the editing was real sharp in this episode, especially when Winters was discussing who could run Easy Company. It reminded me of something like Tarantino or Scorsese would do, where you bring up somebody, then they go flashback scene. Buck Compton was being considered to lead Easy Company at the time. It was Buck. So Buck was the guy they was thinking about. You brought up how these guys be shaving, man. Like I think Winters was shaving in this episode. It's weird.
Yeah,
Like, these
it's
dudes
crazy.
staying squared away in the middle of
Yeah.
like war.
Nowhere.
So Dyke, man, he really told Lip, like he said, get things organized as he goes for help. You know what I'm saying? So these are guys that's like already they can't find you. You know, now you talking to your you know, the guy that's in command of your troops, but you're the commanding officer of that, you know, that unit, and you tell this guy to get everybody together while you go you know, you go for help. Then it's like, remember the dude, I don't know where you got to it, but Joe, he one of the barrages, you know, ripped his leg off or whatever, right? It did. It happened again. Like he got caught in a barrage again trying to get to safety. He said, "What's a guy got to do to get killed around here?"
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I found that funny, man. And then just for these guys to still have a sense of humor through all that was, you know, inspiring.
Leg gone, leg off.
Yeah,
that's how he talking. Gone.
Buck Compton, man, he was messed up after that.
Yeah.
You know, I think you got
him
there. Like he just wasn't the same person after that, right?
Yeah.
Like it just was, and they understood. Like it wasn't like they, you know, had no ill will toward him because of that. That took him out the running for replacing Dyke. He was like the number one guy that they thought would replace Dyke. I had a question for you. Do you think that people do what Lipton did for Dyke in the Navy now? Like, so for instance, you think a first class, you know, go to a group of junior sailors and like speak well, you know, in representation of their chief, in the midst of the junior sailors talking shit about them, or do you think they would ignore it? If you do think it, what you think is the ratio of that?
Well,
like how often?
First I'm gonna say I will hope they would, but do I think it happens? I will say no. But I also think it depends on the relationship that the chief have with the first class, also, right? Because it's a lot of things like people leave from all different, you know, ways they try to leave from, and one of those ways is if you bring in your first class in and he have more info than the troops may have, right? And maybe he can explain some situations better than, you know, better to the troops than, you know, they don't know the whole stories. But if he in the same dark like everybody else, he or she is probably gonna just join in, like, yeah, he's not a good lead. You know what I mean? May not know. So, but do I think, because believe it or not, man, sometimes it's my opinion that I believe we in a world where we trying to make people like us too much. Right. And I think we in a world making people like us, we kind of like sit back and just listen, even though we may want to say something, but we don't want to be that person. Now these guys may not like me no more if I try to do this or I try to do that. So sometimes we in that type of environment, but some people don't understand is you may get more respect by saying something. You know what I mean? So, but I just think that's what type of world we in right now, man. We want people to like us, so we may not, you know, come out and say things or take up for or whatever the case may be.
Yeah. So I got a question for anybody listening, whether you're a junior sailor or you've been in a position before. If you have been in that position where you heard somebody, you know, saying something bad about a superior and you didn't stop them, whether you agree with them or not, but you didn't stop them, why didn't you? Is it a reason why? Is it, you know, something that you wanted to see happen or something that you felt strongly about that you didn't stop them? So pretty much, if you never saw Band of Brothers, the Dyke was their commanding officer. He was pretty much defunct. He never was around, and the junior guys was talking shit about him. And then one of their, you know, more senior guys was like, you know, nah, you know, you pretty much nah, we can't do that. We don't do that. Don't do that, or whatever. So if you ever, what's up?
I got a story because I know somebody like, well, somebody probably on the pod or listening to me, well, what have you ever been in that type of situation? I'm gonna give you a real quick two different scenarios that I was in before. And I'll tell you what I done. Like we had, in my opinion, we didn't have a good chief. And me and my, you know, fellow first classes in the same division, we was talking about the chief. Right. So it was like us, you know, talking, blah, 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 all type of shit or whatever. But then one day we was all together and we had junior sailors around, and the second class said something about the chief, and I stepped in.
Yeah.
And mostly because of all the junior, regardless, I don't want the junior sailors to hear us, you know what I mean, having conversations like that. You know, you got E3s, E2s, whatever around. So I kind of cut it off right there. But that was the difference in me being with my peers, talking first classes, and then, a lot of junior sailors around too. So that was kind of one of the scenarios that I had before in my career.
Yeah. And yeah, it's just a thing I'm interested in if the listeners ever been through it, right? Hit after hit, they kept taking hits, man. Eventually, I can't wait till I get to where I get to the part that you didn't see yet. So a dud hit a foxhole, right? And then another shell hit that wasn't a dud, and two other people died. It took a lot out of Lip to make that report about Dyke. So Lip went to Winners and told Winners that Dyke was an empty uniform. I don't know if you saw that part. But Lip actually went to Winners and talked to him, and he was like, "Hey, and he was like real humbled, and it was lit, man. He's stand-up guy, man. But he was saying he believed that lives would be lost on account of Dyke. And he's like, he's an empty uniform. We already know that Winners kind of knows that. Like every time he look back and say, "Hey, right, Dyke," and then Dyke is like gone. Dyke crapped out, man. He crapped out. He froze. He couldn't make a decision. Like the shit went down, bro. Like
shit! I gotta watch
shit
this.
Shit went down.
It
went down. Dyke froze. He froze. He couldn't make a decision. He crapped out. He caused people to die. What he was saying to do caused people to die. It's people in his face. Like, what's next? So he got people in his face saying what to do. He giving them bad orders. Then he also got the people telling him that Winners is on the phone trying to get in contact with him or whatever, and he's not grabbing the phone. So he got things coming from all over. He couldn't make it, man. He wasn't cut out for it. Like I said, this is my favorite episode, I think, because I could relate to it the most, right? So I've been in Lipton's position and I've been in Winner's position before. I've been in a position of the junior seller that like was caught up in a mix and felt like I was under somebody that wasn't doing their greatest. Then I've been in a position of a superior who had a junior seller that approached me because they felt like the person between us wasn't doing their greatest. So I've been in that position, a few ways. So Spears came in, the dude. So I'm spoiling it for you, of course, because we're reviewing it for this episode, right?
That's fine.
But so boy gets pulled, right? He done. Dyke, he gets pulled. They pull this dude named Spears in that they talked about, some rumors about him just being the man. He came in, he laid the play down, man, and he led from the front. He laid the play down properly. He led from the front, man. Like he runs through enemy fire. Like he's like superheroes. And he go through enemy fire. They don't even shoot him, He just like they like shocked that he doing it. Like he go in, he run the play. Good. He take over. He get the men in there, and they get a little dub. Then this sniper gets weird, and I ain't gonna get that up as a spoiler. Lip is the man for that move that he did to kind of come to sniper. But I don't want to talk about the sniper thing. You gotta watch it though. Lip is the man. Super humble, real cool, man. Donnie Wahlberg, good stuff. The episode ended. One of the best ends of an episode, man. I kind of don't want to give it away now because you got to watch it though. This, out of all of their episodes, this one ended really good with some real good news and a really good scene, man. Really good, man. Real good episode.
Good, man. It's good. I'm most definitely gonna finish it, man. But I just wanted to say about the part that I got to, which I got like I think 40-something minutes in, and it was like it was the breaking point, man. Everybody, it was a lot. All the stuff you said, but it was multiple people broke in this one, man. In this episode, it's a lot of death and a lot of people broke in this one, man. And a lot of people we've been watching for a long time, either dead or out the fight.
It's coming to a head.
Yeah, man, it was a lot of that in this. It was most definitely good as hell from the time I watched it anyway. So I can't wait to finish it now, man. But a good movie. I mean, a good TV show, man. It seems like every episode is getting better.
Yeah. All right. Well, I got to get back to my brother because he going crazy on FaceTime. So I need to see what he doing and talking about. And I might run out of recording time on my camera.
Yeah,
but
man,
hey,
for sure.
But we missed a week, guys, and we missed you. I missed you guys last week for some weird reason, right?
Yeah,
so
man.
We came back, and hopefully we came back with a really good episode.
Banger.
Hopefully we came back with a real good episode. We can't wait to see you again. Women's History Month. We love everybody, all the fans, all the women. I'm signing out. Peace out. This Damo, Mississippi Stand Up.